Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1127 of the nightly war news stream. And tonight we have very big news out of Lithuania that U.S. soldiers are now missing near the Belarusian border. Also, France is announcing a major Ukraine aid package, and the Ukraine-Russia partial ceasefire is already falling apart this quickly. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as breaking news has emerged from only 7 miles away from the Belarusian border that 4 U.S. soldiers operating an M88 recovery vehicle have now been announced missing. Their vehicle has been found inside of a nearby river, and currently U.S. search and rescue operations are underway, although no sign of the soldiers has been found either inside the recovery vehicle or downstream from the recovery vehicle inside the river, or in the surrounding forests or lakes that have been found near to the area of the wreck. We have also been able to find additional information as well that the United States of America is currently conducting armed operations against proxy cells within the area of Somalia, as air operations against the Yemeni Houthis is still underway at this very moment. Meanwhile, the Israelis have been able to announce a major victory today, as the head of the Hamas propaganda department has been announced as dead after an Israeli airstrike struck his building and ended up killing him in the midst of the Israeli ground operations now beginning within northern Gaza and as well as southern Gaza near to the city of Rafah. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran, according to U.S. intelligence and information, now has the ability to produce enough enriched uranium materials to be able to produce a nuclear weapon in less than a week, at least in accordance with the amount of nuclear materials that they can produce. Meanwhile, we've also been able to hear significant news from inside the area of the Indian Ocean, where we have been able to see picture and video evidence of the B-2 stealth bombers, the B-2 Spirits is what they're technically called, arriving into the area of Diego Garcia in preparation for possible air activities or air operations and air campaigns to be conducted against the Islamic Republic of Iran in the future. Meanwhile, inside the area of the Western Pacific, we have been able to see that North Korea today has unveiled a very oddly, indigenously produced, as they claim, oddly A-50 mainstay-shaped AWACS system, the first of its kind in the North Korean Air Force, and we've also been able to hear of other major news inside of Ukraine, as we have been able to hear that Ukrainian armed forces have continued to push the Russian Federation back near to the city of Pokrovsk and Toretsk. And we've also been able to see that Russian prisoners were taken today near to the city of Pokrovsk. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation is continuing their actions against the Ukrainian armed forces inside the Kursk direction, as Ukrainian air support is beginning to be used very heavily within this direction. Not only that, but on the diplomatic level, we are starting to see a slight shift in the U.S. position towards the Russian Federation, and the Russian Federation is quite truly showing its true ambitions again, as they are now demanding, after a supposed energy infrastructure and naval ceasefire were supposed to go into effect yesterday, that the Russian Federation is saying that they will not put the ceasefire into effect until all sanctions are to be lifted from the Russian Federation, and only then will they actually affect the ceasefire, meaning that they are now breaking the ceasefire agreement because they are now adding an additional condition that was not agreed upon or discussed at all in the Riyadh conference in between the Russian Federation and the United States of America. We are actually seeing, as a matter of fact, that the President of the United States is now saying that the Russian Federation is conducting stalling tactics in the negotiations and maybe operating in bad faith. Once again, saying maybe operating in bad faith when it is quite obvious that they are. We have also been able to see that inside the Polish Republic, a significant announcement was made today that, according to military analysts, Poland would only be able to hold out for a mere 14 days against the Russian Federation if a major ground war was to start. But at the same time, Zelensky arrived in Paris today, and the French government has approved another 2 billion euros support package for the Ukrainian military, including a large amount of missiles and other kinds of munitions that will be used by the Ukrainian armed forces into the future. We have quite a significant amount of news today, a fairly large amount, as a matter of fact, from most areas of the world, including even the Western Pacific, which has largely been quiet, at least as of recently. But still, we are going to be knocking out all of this news here for y'all on air. And moving on into our first and most major piece of news today, we have been able to hear about a mysterious disappearance of U.S. forces, or 4 U.S. soldiers, operating an M88 recovery vehicle only 7 miles away from the Belarusian border. We do not know exactly where the vehicle was lost. We were told that it was around 7 miles away from the Belarusian border, so these markers are not meant to represent the actual location of the vehicle's abandonment. It more so is just a rough representation of being 7 miles away from the Belarusian border. Nevertheless, we were able to hear that earlier on in the day, soldiers were declared missing. Apparently, according to the United States, they were conducting an operation as a part of the 1st Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division, near to the area of Pokrovsk, Lithuania, close to the Belarusian border. Lithuanian military, police, and U.S. forces are searching the area, and the U.S. Embassy in Vilnius confirms the ongoing search efforts, at least at this moment. From what we understand, the story has been heavily mired today in a controversy, or more so different stories that have been emerging and coming out about what actually has been going on. But I will tell you all the best story that we have, at least so far, that tells us what's really going on, at least at this point. Also, I'm going to be moving the markers a little bit further north because Pokrovsk is in that area. So it's about somewhere around here, and it's about 7 miles away from the Belarusian border. But nevertheless, the M88 recovery vehicle was conducting some form of an exercise along with other U.S. units and Lithuanian units in the area when, interestingly enough, communication was lost with the M88, and a U.S. Search team, or more so a U.S. team, went out to see what happened to the M88. Apparently, they have found it in one of the rivers surrounding the town of Pokrovsk, nearly completely submerged, and with no sign of the crew. Search and rescue teams then tried to enter the M88 recovery vehicle and did not find any presence of the crew inside of the M88 recovery vehicle, and we are now hearing that search and rescue operations are now expanding into the surrounding areas, attempting to find these 4 missing service members. So far, the search has been going on for a significant amount of time, approximately 12 to 14 hours at this point, and we have not been able to hear of, we have not heard of any bodies or living soldiers being found that were in the crew of that M88 recovery vehicle. The situation is a little bit suspicious, to say the least. We haven't really heard of anything like this happening before, and there are a couple of things to explore with an M88 recovery vehicle that would make this situation a lot more mysterious than it would seem. An M88 recovery vehicle is a fairly common sight to see in really any Western equipped military inside of Europe or inside of North America. The M88 is built off of the M60 patent for the large part, if I'm remembering this correct, and I want to make sure that I am getting that correct. It is actually built off of M48 and M60 patent tanks, but this is a fairly common recovery vehicle even to see in the modern day in the U.S. Army. These vehicles are used to recover heavier vehicles and equipment that may weigh dozens of tons from situations where they may have gotten bogged down in incredibly difficult terrain, such as heavy mud or the Rasputitsa in Eastern Europe, or any other kinds of situations where a heavy tonnage vehicle may need to be recovered. The M88 is usually the one to be brought into the area. What is interesting about this, however, is the fact that the M88 went into a river that apparently was not passable inside of this area of Lithuania. There are not really a large amount of deep rivers inside of Lithuania. This is the river Zemena, which is inside of the actual town of Pabradė itself. And if y'all want to see how deep this river is, we can actually drop y'all down on Street View near to it. And it's not wildly deep. You can almost actually see the bottom of the river throughout most parts, meaning that an M88 could run into the river, but the idea of it being completely submerged to the point that the crew would actually drown inside the vehicle is highly unlikely. Another additional thing that is incredibly odd about this fact is that the 4 crew inside of an M88 have a very high field of visibility. It's not like the driver cannot see. There is a view slit, which you can see right there. There is one of the view slits for the driver, and this is also the driver's compartment on this German M88. All M88s are exactly the same, meaning that the driver has a lot of forward visibility at a low angle in front of the tank, meaning that it's not like he cannot see exactly what's in front of him, and he also has a very large field of view surrounding him. If the driver saw that they were going to be driving into an impassable river, then they most likely would have stopped and informed their commander, and then the commander, of course, would have to make a foolish decision to push forward into the river and order the driver to go ahead anyways, and then just run the thing clean into the river and have everyone drown. The problem is that from what we're understanding, the vehicle was found partially submerged, but it doesn't appear that water ever passed over, at least according to the information we have right now, the actual upper area of the hull of the M88, meaning that the vehicle would not have been pretty much wouldn't have foundered, or at least wouldn't have filled with water and forced the crew to bail. So for some reason, the vehicle made it into a body of water near to this area. Once again, we don't really see a lot of rivers that are of a significant enough size, or any bodies of water at all that would be of a significant enough size to completely submerge an M88, and the crew is missing. Another thing that we also have to point out as well is that usually during river fording operations, there is a large amount of friendly vehicles nearby. This is usually done as a group effort, just in case if there was any sort of a hazardous condition that would appear inside the water. You're not going to be seeing an M88 recovery vehicle on its own with no one else around and practically no communication crossing a river on its own. So once again, it's a little bit odd to see that it went missing and then they had to go and find out what happened to the M88, because the fact that it was even near a body of water or got into it without any other friendly vehicles nearby to be able to support them in case they got into a bad situation is once again a little bit suspicious, at least according to the story. The most suspicious thing that we've heard so far is that there is no sign of the soldiers anywhere around the M88 recovery vehicle further downstream if they are in a river, or at least within the surrounding body of water, or within the surrounding forests either. Search and rescue efforts have been underway for 12 to 14 hours, and a pretty significant area has been combed around the vehicle to try and see exactly where they went. And so far, no one has had any clue on where they've gone or what is turned up of the crew. It appears that the crew quite literally disappeared without a trace from the M88 recovery vehicle, and we are still trying to figure out any signs of life that may be found in the surrounding area, or at least any proof of signs of life that may show that possibly the soldiers abandoned the vehicle and then got lost in the surrounding woods, but that still seems highly unlikely because search and rescue efforts would have most likely found them by this point. It seems as though...
You know what else? What else is weird is so far the NATO Secretary General came out and said that the soldiers were actually deceased. He came out and originally said that, and then later he walked that back and said, wait a minute, I was actually mistaken. We're actually still searching for them right now, and we're not sure where they are. But they did say that they did indeed find the M88 submerged in the water near the Belarusian border. So that's the only thing we know right now. It's kind of weird, like the enforcer's saying, that they found the vehicle submerged in the water, but the soldiers were apparently not there, or otherwise, why would they still be searching for the soldiers if they saw their bodies there in the vehicle?
And then once again, there doesn't seem to be a large amount of bodies of water. There are some, and they do look somewhat deep. At least this lake looks somewhat deep. But once again, it would be a little bit odd for an M88 recovery vehicle to get that close to a body of water and then slide in. And once again, from what we're understanding, it is partially submerged, not entirely submerged. Suggesting that the vehicle didn't go all the way under the water and that most of it was still exposed to the open air where people could visually identify that the vehicle was inside the water. And so once again, all of this is seeming a little bit odd, at least at this moment. We haven't really heard of something like this happening the entire time that we've covered news here on the channel. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been putting in their opinions, or at least their best guesses right now, about what happened to these 4 U.S. soldiers that are missing from their recovery vehicle and have yet to be found anywhere within the surrounding area. A lot of people have been putting in their thoughts, and it seems that a majority of people are saying that the soldiers may likely be dead. Once again, we don't have any confirmation on that. That's just what a lot of people are assuming at this point. Some others are saying that the soldiers may be victims of foul play. Some people, a very low amount of people, actually the smallest amount of people, are saying that the soldiers may have deserted, and some others are saying that they're unsure and undecided on this point about what really happened. But Matthew, what are you thinking about this, and what is everyone else thinking about it? Because it is a very grave situation to not know where 4 U.S. service members are, and there's a high likelihood that they may be in some sort of serious trouble if they haven't been found yet.
So it looks like 45% of the audience said the soldiers are likely dead, while 31% said the soldiers are likely victims of foul play of some sort, and 8% said the soldiers may have deserted. And right now, there is no evidence that the soldiers have deserted. So we want to give the soldiers the benefit of the doubt here. We don't want to say they've deserted without knowing that for a fact. So there's no evidence so far indicating that. So I would say that is unlikely at the moment. Of course, there's always a possibility they could have run across the Belarusian border into Belarus. But me personally, in my opinion, I would say that is somewhat unlikely. Also, the soldiers being victims of foul play, I would also say that would be somewhat unlikely as well. Maybe a Russian or Belarusian type of force crossed the border to take them out. Maybe, but that's pretty far-fetched. And if something like that happened, that would be quite a wild story, and I would have to see that to believe it. So I'm with the 44%. Unfortunately, I think the soldiers are likely dead. They might have died in a drowning accident in that vehicle. I'm not sure why they'd have driven the vehicle in the water like that. Because, of course, obviously they're going to drown. But, you know, things do happen like that from time to time. That could be the case. But it's just really weird to me that they haven't been found just yet, and they're still looking. And the fact that they are not declaring them dead is very, very fascinating, to say the least, and kind of disturbing. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I wanted to say that, in my opinion, I would believe that the soldiers might be dead. Unfortunately, I would have to say that that would most likely be the case. If they haven't turned up in 12 to 14 hours, it's a little bit odd. I would say that it's highly unlikely that the Belarusians or the Russians would have captured a recovery crew of an M88, because measuring about 10 kilometers away from the border near to Poprade actually could put them all the way behind the town of Poprade, meaning that if it was a Belarusian or Russian unit that ended up capturing these soldiers and then bringing them across the border so that way they could try and make up a situation later, they would have actually had to have driven past the town of Poprade or possibly found some other way to get them. But once again, it would have been a fairly deep area inside of Lithuania. It's not like it's right on the border where you could just walk across, grab them, and walk back. So that would be a little bit of a difficult scenario to try and push or sell for the large part. I would say that if something did happen, possibly the M88, once again, we don't have exact details about the specific location of the vehicle, may have slid into a river. The soldiers may have attempted to bail out of the vehicle, and then they were either dragged down under the water due to the weight of their equipment, or possibly the currents were quite strong in the river and swept them further on down. But once again, usually there would be some sort of a sign that they are floating down a river. Usually, bodies do float after a time, although they may be too heavy to float, or they may have had their foot caught inside of a rock where they're at the bottom of a river and you really can't see them because their body is not floating to the surface. But nevertheless, it is a little bit of an odd situation. I really do not know what to make of it. I would have to say, though, that if they haven't shown up within 12 to 14 hours, their vehicle was lost, I would suppose, near to a populated area. It's a fairly significant village, and not only that, it's not like they wouldn't run into any smaller villages nearby. There are Lithuanians living throughout the entirety of the surrounding area that they could have run into at any kind of a house. I would say that at this point, the chances are is that they are most likely, if not dead. It would be a miracle if if they're not. And I would say that that's probably the best case scenario that we could ever see, is that they're alive. But I would also have to say that the chances of them deserting are highly unlikely. The entire crew being in cahoots to conduct a desertion would be unheard of. We've actually never heard of such a thing in the entire history of the U.S. military over the past, over the entirety of the U.S. military's history, at least from what I can recall. There's never been a successful mutiny in the Navy. There's never been an entire crew that has deserted with a vehicle in the U.S. military's history. Nothing like this would have ever happened before. So for an entire M88 recovery crew to all agree and be in cahoots to ditch their vehicle into a river and then defect to Belarus would be the most unlikely situation I believe that we could see at this point. So either they are in a very low chance scenario, once again, the Belarusians grabbed them somehow and then ditched their vehicle into the river, or the more likely scenario is that they accidentally ran into the river somehow through some sort of a miscalculation or faulty navigation by the crew, and then they bailed out and then possibly got swept away by a current and drowned. It is incredibly unusual, though.
Or a third option could be maybe they got the vehicle stuck in the waters and they bailed out of the vehicle, and then they figured, okay, we need to navigate our way out of here and get back to where we're trying to go. And by some happenstance, maybe they crossed over accidentally into Belarus, and maybe they were captured by Belarusian security forces. That could be another possibility. But at the same time, though, they do have obviously navigation skills. So to do something like that, that would require some blunders as well, some pretty bad blunders, to wander right over into Belarus. And of course, I'm not sure how the Belarusian border looks, but you'd imagine that there probably would be some type of marker, fence, or something that would indicate they're crossing over into another country. So whatever the case is, with them not being found, it leaves the door wide open to speculation. And also another thing as well, the U.S. president was asked about this today. The reporters asked him at one of these press conferences, have you heard anything about these quote-unquote deceased soldiers inside of Lithuania? He claimed to have no knowledge about it, meaning that the U.S. president has not been informed of any deaths of any soldiers inside of Lithuania, which indicates, once again, that they could still be alive, and they've not informed him that they're actually dead because they haven't found them yet. So there's a lot of speculation running rampant right now, but there's a lot of options that are still wide open.
Also, a couple other things. It's really hard to say that they are dead. Once again, we're saying here on the channel, there's a decent likelihood that they are dead by this point. But if you haven't found a body, largely search and rescue efforts will assume that they are alive until they either find a body or several days have passed with no sign of them. And then by then, most people would die of thirst or starvation by that point, being exposed to the elements for several days without any supplies. So then they would be assumed dead. And if you find no evidence of a body, they would still be assumed to be alive because you don't have any proof to confirm the opposite, which is that they're dead. So search and rescue teams are still going to be working off of the concept that they are alive somewhere and they're missing, and they're going to be trying to find them under that premise. They mostly will not turn into a rescue, well, more so of a search attempt for bodies until several days after the search has initiated, which means that it would be several days from this point even right now. But still, an incredibly mysterious story, one that we've never really heard of before. I have actually, in the entire history of covering news on this channel, we have never heard of soldiers just disappearing from a vehicle. This is probably one of the most bizarre stories that we've ever heard, because we have heard of Black Hawk helicopters having critical failures and the entire crew getting killed in the crash. We've heard of Ospreys crashing and getting most of the crew killed, as well as Sea Stallions and a whole bunch of other kind of vehicles. But we have never heard of an Army recovery vehicle missing its entire crew with no signs of them to be found anywhere around the vehicle or anywhere within the surrounding area. It's truly one of the biggest mysteries that we've seen so far. It's almost like the Mary Celeste of its time on land. So hopefully we'll be able to find where they are, and hopefully they will be alive when we find them. But still, it seems like a very interesting situation and a harrowing one nevertheless. But moving on from that news of the missing soldiers. Also, by the way, I think we have some additional news right here. Nah, maybe later. Matthew posted one here. I wanted to make sure that we had a redundant one just in case if the other post was deleted. But moving on from that, and on out of the area, we have been able to hear in other news that the Ukrainian armed forces have still continued to make significant advances on the front lines today in Pokrovsk and Toretsk. We were able to see proof of this as the Ukrainian armed forces were able to capture scouts of the 155th Mechanized Brigade of the Russian Army here in the outskirts of Pokrovsk. We believe that this was near to the town, and I want to make sure that I get the name correct so that way I can pronounce it. I believe these guys were found just east of the town of Kotline, which is along the major Ukrainian main main line heading south, or more so west, out of the city of Pokrovsk, although in this specific area, it's heading southwesterly. But we can see here that they were able to capture the
Руські
scouts.
розвідоси передають привіт українським піхотинцям.
Там видно, блядь, чи ні?
Виліз трошки, блядь.
Yes.
Ну що, пацани, довоювалися, блядь. Дай Бог, щоб повернулися додому живими, блядь. І не лазили на нашій
Мне
землі.
кажется, им в плену больше понравится, чем дома, да?
The guys with duct tape on their hands, by the way, are the scouts, just to clear that up. But once again, it is good to see that they were able to take some scouts, and we also were able to see that the Russians in the area are not really doing too well, at least as far as the whole counterattack concept goes. We saw them using e-scooters, electric scooters, once again today. You know, the razors that you buy your kids for Christmas, you know, like those sorts of scooters.
Oh, yeah.
We saw them using them today in Pokrovsk. You can see them right there, trying to use them in dirt and also thickets. They don't really work that well in that kind of... Oh, that guy just face planted. Oh, look,
dang.
dude, look at him. Wait for me. Bam, dude, face planted. Shins hit the side of that thing. It's over. I gotta tell you, that's over for that guy. But meanwhile, we also get to see the Ukrainian armed forces taking out Russian soldiers within the area with the FPV drones, and we were able to see these clips right here. We can see a Russian here riding a moped. He just appears to have bailed off of it, and he's now trying to make a run for it. But making a run for it just never really works, and it didn't work for him. We can now see another FPV drone going for another Russian in the area. We can see them now hitting the Russian, and it looks like it was a successful hit. And we can now see them going for another one.
This is like the swamp or something right here. It's just water just sitting everywhere.
I gotta tell you, the Russians, they're saying we have to drain the swamp. Like it's making it too hard to walk. Our racist scooters, they get run down into the mud. Very sad, terrible stuff. And we see them here hitting another Russian. This guy threw his AK at it and it still didn't work. And that was the end of the clip. But still, we are hearing that the Ukrainian armed forces are still making ground around the town of Shevchenko, Pischane, and Kotlene against the Russian Federation's armed forces, and are continuing to drive them further south and east from the outskirts of the city of Pokrovsk. Meanwhile, moving on from that news, we also were able to hear within the city of Toretsk that the Ukrainian armed forces are still pushing the Russians back. Today's advances were not that large. We did see that the Ukrainians were able to continue to advance further from Sherbanivka on the southern flank, and also were able to advance further into the southern suburb of the city of Toretsk, largely once again showing that Russia's southern flank on the battlefield is in jeopardy of collapse, possibly. But we also saw the Ukrainians shelling the Russian forces in Toretsk with the police force's artillery. Man, you know the cops are well armed when they have their own artillery detachment. Now that's something.
They're armed to the teeth.
Man, imagine if the city of Birmingham police had 155mm howitzers at their disposal. That would be an interesting sight.
That would actually be horrifying, actually.
That would be scary. That would be terrifying, really. But we can see them slamming the Russians' positions inside the city of Toretsk. This largely is throughout the entirety of the city, including the built-up downtown and all the way to the southern flank, as it appears that the national police were largely conducting artillery support for any units that were calling it in the area, and it's a general montage of those fire support missions. But moving on from that clip and out of the city of Toretsk, we also have been able to hear in other interesting news that it appears, shockingly enough, folks, that the Russians have already broken the ceasefire that was agreed to in Riyadh just a couple of days ago. All of y'all know of that successful ceasefire agreement. We got all the clips about it right here in Riyadh. And we know that the Americans were stating that it was a major success and peace has been secured. It's peace for our time, and we will never see war again. And then the Russians came out and they made their statements saying that they were not going to be doing anything really until they got their demands. Now the Russians today have really made a impressive demand. It's an amazing demand that all sanctions must be lifted before the Ukrainian maritime ceasefire and the critical energy infrastructure ceasefire can start. Once again, I want to remind you all on this one that the Russians in Riyadh agreed to a naval and energy infrastructure ceasefire on the grounds that agricultural exports would be allowed into the open world, and not only that, Russian banks would be released pretty much in full back into the SWIFT banking system. Now they are saying they are altering the deal, pray they alter it any further, and now all sanctions have to be lifted before they ever go into a limited ceasefire at all, meaning that the Russians have to get everything they want for us to get crumbs in exchange. absolutely crazy. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen. They literally went and reneged from the deal almost a day after they agreed to a ceasefire at all. Once again, the Russians are pissing in the face of every single American and every single citizen of a European nation and every single citizen of the state of Ukraine. They are making it incredibly clear that they have no intentions to actually operate in good faith and goodwill in any diplomatic negotiations that are currently being conducted right now, whether it be the United States of America, or it be Europe, or it be Ukraine directly, or any other intermediary or third party like Turkey. They have made it evidently clear that they do not wish to move forward with any kind of diplomatic process to bring the war to an end. The Russians are still clear that they are wanting to win absolutely in Ukraine. They are wanting to reach a unconditional victory in the country. And not only that, they continue to threaten the Europeans with their posturing to the point that most of Europe is in the process of pre-mobilization right now. If it wasn't any clearer, it is apparently so clear that even the President of the United States made a comment on it today and stated that Putin is stalling. Well, I sat there and almost coughed right into the microphone. But Trump accused Putin of stalling negotiations while admitting that he has used this tactic himself in business. He stated, "I've done it over the years, and it's been a thing that I've done." He also stated that the use of stalling, the U.S. president says of using stalling tactics when negotiating contracts. Just to make sure that we get the words correct here, because I wasn't really good at trying to stitch that all together. But beyond that, Ukraine immediately agreed. Next is once again recapping something that we have recapped a million times on air. Ukraine immediately agreed to the initial proposal for a full unconditional ceasefire requiring no preconditions for the Russians to accept. The Russians didn't have to do anything. All they had to do was agree to stop the fighting, and the fighting would have stopped for a month. Instead, Putin quickly rejected it, continued the war, and then started to play these stupid games that we're seeing right now. Even the President of the United States, which has seemed to have a lot of deference for the Russians so far, is even saying that it appears that they are conducting stalling tactics because it is so obvious you'd have to be blind to not see it. It's something that is just incredibly annoying at this point to know that we're pretty much being played like a fiddle by the Russians, and we continue to let the Russian Federation play us like a fiddle. I've just never seen anything like it before. It is quite clear that the Russian Federation views us as an enemy. It really isn't our choice to view the Russians as an enemy. They've made themselves the enemy. They do not want to operate in good faith either towards the United States, Europe, or Ukraine. They view us all as the same thing. They view us as enemies of Russia and Russia's interests. It is incredibly obvious. It becomes more and more obvious with every single passing day. And a lot of people have been talking about what the Russians did today. The Russian sanctions, or more so the Russians saying that the sanctions must be lifted before they adhere to a Ukrainian ceasefire agreement. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this one. And this is one of the most unanimous polls that I've ever seen. It's almost 90%. It's very rare to see that on a single decision. I mean, this is truly an amazing decision. One of the greatest. You never see a unanimous decision like this. We won bigly, won really bigly, and I gotta say that it's incredible to see everyone saying that Russia never intended to agree to a ceasefire. Absolutely incredible. But Matthew, what are people saying about this, and what are you thinking about it?
All right, so 86% said Russia never intended to agree to the ceasefire proposal, while 9% said U.S. officials lied about the deal, and 2% said Russia is just a little bit confused. And honestly, I'm a little bit confused here myself at this point, because it seems like they had a deal yesterday, but at the same time, all the varying statements that came out from Ukraine, Russia, and the United States indicated that nobody was really on the same page. So we weren't really sure what the status of it was, but today we find out that Russia wants to basically get everything they want before they actually adhere to a ceasefire proposal, which is completely opposite of what the United States told us. So I would say that Russia never intended to agree to it. That's probably the case. And they are simply finding a way out at this point, like usual. They did that the last time, and they're doing it this time again. So they're just stalling for time, like the U.S. president admitted to today. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say the Russians never intended to agree to anything. They are stalling, and they were operating in bad faith. It's been very clear since day one of the attempt to try and end this conflict. The conflict keeps going because of Russia, not because of Ukraine. That's why Zelensky said he didn't want to talk to the Russians, because he knew that this would be the kind of approach that the Russians would take. It's nothing new. Anyone who's paid attention to the war has seen this for 3 years. And I would have to say that at this point, it's very clear that the Russian Federation never had an intent to agree to anything in Riyadh, and they were simply trying to placate the U.S. and play them like fools. I'd have to say that at this point, Woodcoff, in my opinion, looks like an absolute fool, because I've never seen anyone go into a diplomatic negotiation and literally be spoon-fed propaganda by the other diplomats on the other side and then just work with it and go, oh, really? The Ukrainians are not nice people? That's why y'all are fighting the war? Oh, okay, I get it. I understand now. Y'all are fighting to unify the Russian people? Oh, okay, yeah. I think the Russians are operating in good faith here. And then he comes out of the negotiations, and then the Russians are not operating in good faith on any single step of the process, and they're already breaking apart the ceasefire that was agreed upon really just yesterday. It is crazy to me, man. It blows my freaking mind. What's even better, man, is that everyone's been acting like, oh, we can trust the Russians. It's like, no, you cannot trust the Russians. Trusting the Russians is like trusting a scammer. I mean, like, really, it is. There is no reason to trust the Russians. The Russians lie and deceive about everything. Literally everything. I mean, you can even see it in the proof is in the pudding. You can see how much they lie based off of the how well they said their military operated before the war. They put inactive APCs and tanks onto their active registry for usable vehicles. So before the war, the Russians had the largest ground force in the world in terms of tanks and APCs. Then come time for the war, guess what? They hardly have a couple of thousand of them. They have about half of the operational tanks and APCs at the beginning of the war that the U.S. military currently has that actually is operational, because they listed every single tank and APC that was in a graveyard somewhere rotting away as an active MBT and an APC. They were lying from the outset. Like, they've been lying for decades on that. And then everyone found that out in the actual war in Ukraine. They've been lying about how well-trained and elite their troops are. We found that out in the first month of the Ukraine war when the VDV got shellacked by a National Guard unit of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. I mean, there's like, you can't even make that up. They got their asses beat by the paper-pushing clerks of the 4th Rubish Brigade on the first day. Like, that's not to disparage the 4th Rubish. The 4th Rubish did a great job. But at the same time, how bad off was the VDV to get their asses beat by the paper pushers of the 4th Brigade? Like, you can't make that kind of a performance up. It was terrible. They got pushed off the airfield the first day they secured it. That spoke a lot in itself, considering that the VDV was supposedly mythically the best. It was better than the Navy SEALs, according to the Russians and some other Americans. They said that it just couldn't be beat. And then you got a couple of guys, they went from clicking the keys on a typewriter to clicking the helmets off of VDV troops like there was no tomorrow and pushing them off the airfield. Like, when you have stuff like this, there's just no way that you can ever look at the Russians seriously again or trust anything that they say, because much unlike the United States, we hype up our military a lot, but the performance is always there. Like, for example, with the Gulf War, the performance was there. We beat Iraq's ass handily. Hardly took any losses in the process of doing so. It was a hands down total victory for the United States of America, just like the invasion of Iraq was, or any other conflict that the United States has been involved in. We hands down largely win most every conventional conflict that can be seen in history. We hype up our military because it actually is good. Russia hypes up their military because it sucks. It historically sucked under the Soviet Union. It sucks even worse under the Russian Federation because they have no money to spend on it, but they try and make their military sound good because all they have to live off of militarily is the bravado that they provide in the propaganda sphere. They don't have a real military, and once again, much like they don't have a real military, and it's shown very well for 3 years, they don't have a real bone in their body to even try and appease or find common ground with the West. They are looking out entirely for their own self-interest. We've said it for 10 years, and this is a clear proof once again that they have no wish or ambition to view the United States as a friendly or amicable power. They are just trying to play the people in the U.S. government that are there right now and try and get one over on us. That's what they're doing, and I think if we start to approach the Russians like that, I think we'll probably see that there will be a lot more progress in assuring American and Western interests in full. As a matter of fact, something else that I found interesting today, I had to address this one because it appears that this is one that is just wildly funny to me. But before, you know what, before we get into the wildly funny one today, an analysis that blew my mind, the U.S. president has accused the Russians of dragging their feet, or in other words, stalling on negotiations. And a lot of people are wondering, will this cause a shift in relations now that it appears that the president of the United States is also starting to openly say it himself? And it looks like the large majority of people are saying that U.S.-Russian relations are most likely going to sour once more like they had under the prior administration. Some others are saying that U.S. relations will actually still stay good with the Russian Federation on into the future. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So a whopping 73% said yes, the Russia-U.S. relations will go badly from this point forward due to this new accusation by the U.S. president toward the Russian side. And 27% said no, the Russia-U.S. relations will stay good. And honestly, at this point, it's becoming nearly impossible for the relations to actually stay good. And I think that was the intention by the Russians the entire time, because they knew that this would eventually go badly. But their objective was to simply stall for more time and drag this out as far as they could to basically buy themselves some extra time to basically play the United States. And they've kind of run that its course at this point. And now it's time for things to get sour. And it looks like it's starting to get that way right now, according to this brand new accusation by the U.S. president. So I think over time, it's not going to be an instant thing like, you know, you flip a switch and all of a sudden Russia and the United States are going at it. It's going to probably be over several weeks, or if not a month, with Russia continuing this tactic right here. But I'm with the 73%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm with the 73% as well. If the Russians continue to do this, which they will, because it's incredibly obvious, then the United States of America has no other option rather than to double down on supporting Ukraine and forcing the Russians into submission, practically through letting the Ukrainians bomb them into submission. That is really the only way to go with this from this point on. If we continue to try and go down this stupid, asinine path of acting like the Russians actually speak in good faith on anything, we are going to keep getting played like a damn fiddle. Like, it's going to be unbelievable the way that the Russians would play us from this point on. We have to step back. We have to go, it appears that we gave it a shot. The Russians are not willing to do a damn thing to move towards peace. We sat there and strong-armed Zelensky, and he immediately went from, I'm not wanting to talk to them, to, okay, unconditional ceasefire, no preconditions, here you go. And he immediately did that. On the other hand, Putin goes, I'm a great FSB guy. Let's play game. It's like, no, we do not play game. Here's a game we play. Blow up another oil refinery and watch the Russians starve. It's like, that's the game we'll play. And I think that one will win a lot better than this one. The Russians don't understand on a diplomatic level any kind of compassion or reason. It's quite clear at this point why the U.S. has always dealt with the Soviet Union and then later on the Russian Federation really aggressively. Because they don't understand anything else. Like, they really don't. Like, when you sit there and actually try and negotiate something with them in Riyadh, they'll tell you one thing to your face, and then they'll go right back to Moscow, and they'll say a totally different thing. And then they just won't even follow through with what they told you. Like, that's insane. That completely degrades on a diplomatic level any trust that you could put into a Russian statement. Because the Russians say, the sky is red. You know it's blue. You know it's blue because they lie about everything else. They never agree to anything and then uphold it. They've lied out of their ass for 3 weeks. More than that, it's almost been a month now. You have to take it for what it is. You have to play the cards you're dealt with here. And the Russians are as governmentally, are bastards. You have to treat them like that, because if you try and treat them like they're upstanding, reasonable people, you're about to learn something. When you go and see when you go and see for example, a crackhead outside of a gas station that's sitting there and twitching and they're saying, I would kill for the next hit, you don't go up to them and then wave your credit card or a fist of dollar bills around, because you know what's going to happen? They're going to get up and probably stab you and take your money. That's the exact same way you got to look at the Russians. They are fiending for their next hit. They're fiending to expand their sphere of influence. You can't sit there and walk up to them and wave around a wad of cash in their face, because the next thing you know, they're going to stab you and take it from you. You have to treat them like they are. They are an untrustworthy group, and we have to continue to keep the war going until they eventually are forced to actually take negotiations seriously. That's what we should be seeing. And I think that that's what hopefully will start to happen at this point if the U.S. government has sense. But another thing that I heard that was interesting today, to get you onto something a little bit more comical, is a little bit of news that came out about an analysis of the Polish military's ability to defend their country. It's the oldest tricketh in the book, I tell you. It's the oldest tricketh in the book. Back in the day, before the Ukraine war started, military analysts, They were all over Ukraine like white on rice. They were telling everyone, Ukraine might last a week, but they cannot last further than that. They are going to crumble like a cookie in milk after a week. It's going to be over, and the Russians will take the whole country. It'll be a sweep. And 3 years later, the war in Ukraine is still going on. Military analysts came out about the Polish, and they have said one of the best things ever. It's going to age like milk if we ever come around to having to prove this. Poland can only fight the Russians for 2 weeks, and then they're going to crumble.
Why is that, by the way? Because Poland is armed to the teeth, so why would they only be able to hold out for 2 weeks against a crippled force at this point?
I don't even know. And this actually came from the head of Poland's National Security Bureau, which is even a little bit crazier because usually this kind of analysis comes from, someone else. But then again, I do have to say this. General Milley, I believe, was one of the guys back in the day who actually said Ukraine might last a week. And that was an official military, a official of the U.S. military making a genuine expert analysis on how the war in Ukraine would go. And he ended up being wildly wrong. A whole bunch of other people were saying that Ukraine could only last a week as well. But if you don't believe me, just go pull up the articles. You can find them online. There's about 1 million of them that were made before the war in Ukraine started. Now they're trying to say in Poland could only hold out for 14 days. I gotta just ask, what in the world makes it to where, in an analytical perspective, someone will say that we could actually hold out against the Russians? Because I feel like at this point, man, a U.S. official is going to come out and say, against the Russians, we might hold out for 5 minutes, maybe 10, if we're really pushing it. Because everyone always acts like the Russians are these godlike entities of the battlefield. Have y'all seen them? I've seen some of them run up to the Ukrainian trenches, and right when they're about to jump into the Ukrainian trench, they trip and bust their teeth out on the very berm of the trench. I've watched them for 3 years. I watched them go from using T-72B3s and T-90As to now they're using T-62s, T-55s, and they have no modern equipment left. They have no communications, no training, as most of their forces are conscripts, and almost no supplies because they have no logistical supply structure that's actually integrated into the Russian army. That is something that just blows me away, is that they're saying Poland could only survive for 2 weeks. Like they would be able to survive for years against the Russians because of Ukraine, which was qualitatively in a far worse position than Poland is right now, can survive for 3 years. Poland could survive for maybe 10 years at a minimum, fighting a defensive war only. That is a guarantee. Like, that is, y'all can take that and cash that at the bank. That's not to have any overconfidence in Western forces, but at the same time, saying something like Poland can only survive 2 weeks, that's ridiculous. Have y'all seen the Polish military recently? Like the Polish army? Like, just looking at the army? It's insane. Look at that. 110,000 active service members. That is quite a sizable army by European standards. And it's not like the Polish are fighting alone. They are going to have the support of Germany, France, the UK, Italy, the rest of the Balkan states that are now a part of the EU and NATO, Spain, Portugal, and so on, and as well as the Scandinavian countries and Canada. And it appears, according to today's news, the United States, it's not like they'd be alone. The Polish are incredibly strong. Even during the commie eras, when the Polish were a communist state, they were wildly strong militarily back then. And that was when they were a puppet of the Russians, or more so the Soviets. It just always blows me away, because here's what would happen. The Russians would race out of Kaliningrad, close off the Suwalki Gap, and then they'd start pushing down into the open plains of Poland here in the northern eastern part of the country. The Polish would most likely start to stop them around these forests and tree lines, as well as where all of these large lakes are, because they do create bottlenecks, and the Russian offensive would stop there within southern East Prussia. Then the Polish would start to solidify a defensive line, and then would eventually start a counterattack, considering that the rest of NATO would have arrived at that point, and would start to push them back. They would also push through the Suwalki Gap, cutting off Kaliningrad. Hopefully by that point, from the external world, a naval blockade would be put into effect, and by that point, a very large part of the Russian army that would be in Kaliningrad would be in the process of being besieged and starving out of munitions and also supplies. They would eventually surrender, or they would eventually be forced into using tactical nuclear weapons to try and improve their situation, but nevertheless, the situation would be stabilized. That's just on the Kaliningrad front. On the Belarusian front, Like, God bless the Belarusians, man. Like, they're going to be sending armed police pretty much into the Polish army, and the Polish army is one of the best equipped militaries on the face of Europe right now in history. So I don't think that they would be able to stand much of a chance. And if the Russians sent more forces this way, who in the world's fighting in Ukraine at that point? They would be losing in Ukraine to be able to actually even just take on the Polish for a week or two. So I would say that that is a very bad analysis. Once again, it's that fear factor, listening to the Russian propaganda and drinking the Kool-Aid kind of an analysis that's made that isn't made off of actual empirical information. It's more so made off of gut feeling, which you shouldn't follow with the Russians, because the Russians will make you believe that they walk on water. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into some other news from around the world, such as the news coming out of the Middle East, or really the Indian Ocean. But before we get into that, I do want to say that tonight we have some very interesting questions. And Matthew, can we get to a couple of those?
Yes, let's jump into our first super chats of the night. And our first one is going to go to a longtime channel legend. It is Lord Cog, who puts in a $100 donation.
Dang.
Massive support, by the way. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, for by far the largest super chat of the night. We sincerely do appreciate that. And they said, thank you for what you do, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Lord Cog, and thank you so much for enjoying what we do and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. Folks like you help us to keep the lights on and pay our bills, so that way we can continue to work at this thing as a full-time job every single day, putting out amazing short war summaries, and not only that, putting out very good live streams like we have tonight. Today, Matthew actually put out a very good short war summary about the missing U.S. soldiers. Possibly the reason why not a lot of people are watching this stream tonight, because it has a very similar title and also a somewhat similar thumbnail, a little bit, although that was really the big news of the day. Beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much once again, because folks like you make all of this possible, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. We wouldn't have been able to be here for 1,127 days. Also, another thing, by the way, I gotta thank you, Lord Cog, for having been around for ages at this point. I would say that it's at least over 2 years that you've been here almost every single day and night watching our news, and I gotta thank you so much for that, and really appreciating enough to go out of your way to support the channel when nobody has to support it. You only have to support it if you want to, but you don't have to feel like you're ever obligated to, and so that really makes everyone's support even more impressive. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to none other than Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that $20 support, and we do appreciate that very much. And also, they mentioned something here. I think I can read the first part. They said tariffs are attacks, and then they put the American flag behind it, and they put in some choice words about what is happening to America. But I can't read it. It's too graphic. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for the support, Genitals, and I got to say, tariffs are pretty much, in a sense, attacks. They are, and some of y'all may have heard this today. This isn't really within our purview of news, but the United States has now levied a 25% tariff on all foreign car manufacturers, no matter who they are. And so that means that anything from outside the United States, meaning auto parts for a large amount of American-produced vehicles, and also a lot of foreign vehicles, will now have a 25% tariff on them. A little pricey, because everything as far as externally produced foreign car components or cars is now going to be a quarter more expensive. The prices, by the way, are not consumed by the companies. To explain this once again for some people who may not know this, there are these magical entities inside of companies called shareholders. And according to the U.S. Constitution, or not really according to the U.S. Constitution, sorry, correction there, according to a U.S. Supreme Court case, Dodge v. Ford, we actually do understand that a company's primary operative mode is to benefit their shareholders. So that means that there can never be a loss of profits unless if it's out of the company's control. This means that when a 25% tariff is implemented, that doesn't mean that the companies are paying for largely conducting business out of the United States, or that the countries importing are paying for the products that are coming into the United States out of their pockets. That means that you, the consumer, are. You see, the importer doesn't actually take that cost. It's actually the consumer of the importer that's taking on that cost, and then they are going to pass that on to you, the consumers, which means that your products from outside the country are going to be 25% more expensive. At this point, that means that all automobiles, BMWs, Mercedes, Audis, Toyotas, let's see here, what other car companies, Matthew, are from outside the United States? It's practically all of them, but help me out here.
You got like, let's see, some British ones. You got like a Rolls Royce. Nobody's buying that really. You got Bentley. Nobody's really buying that. But you got some other ones that are coming in too, that are overseas, that are European foreign cars that are going to be probably a lot more expensive now.
And they're going to be considerably more expensive because, once again, they are not going to absorb the cost in the company. That's going to hurt the shareholders because they're not getting their dividends like they were. So they have to pass that expense on to y'all. The 25% hike in price is going to be seen for the consumer, not for the company and not for the countries that are importing these goods into the United States. So it really is not going to be beneficial to the U.S. economy. And if you don't believe me, you can always just go look at the Dow Jones, which once again took another plummet today. There's the plummet that happened today. It was about a 500-point plummet. But let's go look at that over the course of things. This is the 1 year mark. We did drop down to 40,000 points from 45,000, nearly a 5,000 point market drop. But now we're back up to a nice steady 42.5. Well, actually, correction, 42.4. It dropped a good bit today. But beyond that, that's what we're seeing at the moment, and I'd have to say it's not looking too good. Hopefully, we'll see that eventually sense is seen in the tariffs aspect, because tariffs just really don't work out that well. You kind of got to just negotiate trade deals well, but tariffing someone just doesn't really turn out that good. Usually, it's damaging to both parties, not just the United States, but also to Europe. But as far as Europe is concerned, there is another big market that would probably take European consumer goods, which would be the Chinese. Because when it comes to a company and their decision making, once again, to put this out there, the shareholders are the most important. And so the company is going to go, oh man, we're taking a massive loss because no one's buying our cars inside of America because it's too expensive to import them because of the tariffs. But we can't just sit on these cars because then they're making no money. So it'd be better to sell them cheaper, but still make some money off of them somewhere. So that's going to force most European companies, because they're going to want to make sure to benefit their shareholders, to go and sell the cars elsewhere. And the only market that could take them would be the Chinese market, meaning that we're really swaying the entire European consumers good industry from the US directly over to China, because that would be the only market that they could really import into in any significant bulk, and hopefully see that there would be some buyers at some price level rather than having no buyers in the United States because their automobiles would be too expensive, along with repair parts and all of that. So I hope that explains a little bit of that to y'all somewhat well. Once again, not getting political here, but it's generally understood that tariffs just are not a good thing to do. But still, thank you once again for support Genitals and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're getting on into the rest of the news.
All right, the last super chat of the segment goes to none other than Marion Deemert, a longtime channel legend as well, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, as well, for helping to get the channel running and also being a longtime viewer as well. And we do appreciate that, of course. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you who went out of their way to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. I got to thank you massively for that, Marion Demon, because once again, if it wasn't for folks like you, where would we be right now? We wouldn't be anywhere, I tell you. We would be nowhere, I says. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news. Moving on down into the Middle East, we were able to hear that the chief propagandist of Hamas was killed today. It's this guy right here. And boy, howdy, look at that unibrow. This guy not only was the chief of propaganda, he was the chief of brows. And boy, he could give a mean one right there, I'll tell you. But it appears that he was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza's Jabalia. And I heard that apparently Jabalia is a little bit of a hotspot today for Israeli airstrikes. The Israeli airstrikes are preceding the Israeli ground forces operations, which are currently inside of Beit Ainun. And it appears that Jabalia is where they most likely would be moving into next. So they're conducting airstrikes within that area, literally pretty much just across the way from Beit Ainun, before the Israeli ground forces start to move into the area again. Once again, very interesting to hear, and great to hear that a spokesperson of an Iranian proxy was knocked out cold. Meanwhile, we also were able to hear that apparently while the USS Harry S. Truman's been in the area bombing the Houthis, they started a side campaign of bombing the ISIS cells in Somalia. We were able to hear that U.S. airstrikes were conducted in the area today, and According to an official statement, in coordination with the federal government of Somalia, U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, conducted multiple airstrikes against ISIS Somalia on March 25th of 2025. The airstrikes occurred in the vicinity of the Golis Mountains in Somalia. AFRICOM's initial assessment is that multiple ISIS Somalia operatives were killed and no civilians were harmed. No collateral, which is a fairly good thing. ISIS Somalia has proved both its will and capability to attack the U.S. and partner forces. This group's malicious efforts threaten U.S. security interests. U.S. Africa Command, alongside the federal government of Somalia and Somalia Armed Forces, continue to take action to degrade ISIS Somalia's abilities to plan and conduct attacks that threaten the U.S. homeland, our forces, and our civilians abroad. Specific details about the operation will be released to ensure continued operation will not be released to ensure continued operation security. I have to say, Matthew, it's very interesting how ISIS works. It's almost like they have franchises, because this is ISIS Somalia instead of just, ISIS. It's like it's a little bit interesting with that. But
honestly, it seems like this is a bad franchise to get into. It seems like they closed down pretty quick.
Man, honestly, it seems like they never make a profit either. They kind of open up, a lot of their employees get taken out, and then they shutter up for good. Not really a good business to get into these days. Maybe they'd rather get into the furniture business, maybe. That might be a good move for them. But anyways, moving on from that and into the area of the Indian Ocean, we were also able to see B-2 Spirits heading to Diego Garcia. Take a look at this. This is a B-2 bomber on its way to Diego Garcia, conducting in-air refueling operations.
Isn't that beautiful? Majestic.
Man, real trap. Oh, look, we can see the in-air refueling probe opening. That's actually really cool.
These things are so menacing looking. Like, they just look like terrifying.
Man, they do for real. And we can see them lining up the fueling probe. This is a very, very complex and delicate kind of a process to conduct in-air refueling. And we can see that the probe has made contact with the aircraft, and we now see them conducting the refueling operation. We now see them removing the fueling probe. The fueling probe is now closing. And now they can be on their merry way. And there it goes, just gently into the horizon, on its way to Diego Garcia. How neat. We love the B-2 Spirits. And on top of that, if you really love B-2 Spirits, being around Diego Garcia right now is the time. It appears that there is a massive amount of KC-135s that are currently at the airbase. To show y'all these, just to make sure that y'all know what a KC-135 is, they're the strato tankers, the ones that were conducting the in-air refueling operation with the B-2 just a second ago. That's it. Pretty cool aircraft. But notice the mass of them here, Matthew. Look at this. They have about 8 of them here at Diego Garcia right now, along with 7 B-2s.
Yeah, that's impressive, actually. What's crazier to me, though, is apparently they don't have enough shelters for these B-2s that are sitting out here on the runway like this. It would seem like they would probably be under some sort of shelter like the other ones, but these aren't.
And it's interesting, it is, because I don't think Diego Garcia was ever made to have the just sheer mass of aircraft that are currently there right now at the airfield. Possibly for surges, maybe, but not necessarily, because there is a very small amount of hardened, well, not really hardened shelters, but at least covered shelters to keep the aircraft from being exposed to the elements when they really don't need to be. But it appears that most of the B-2s, well, not all of them, but some of them, are being stacked out here in the middle of the tarmac and are just sitting out in the wide open with the KC-135s. Another interesting thing to note here is that they have as many, actually here, 1 second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, actually I miscounted them. There are 7 KC-135s. That means that right now at this airbase, they have 1 KC-135 for every B-2 Spirit. That's a little interesting, Matthew. That possibly may be suggesting that they have a single KC-135 to refuel each B-2, or pretty much 1 KC-135 is assigned to each B-2 bomber for refueling operations in whatever action the B-2s are going to be conducting here in the near future.
Surely they wouldn't keep them in the air that long to need an entire refueling tanker, would they? Like each one?
I don't know. Let's go pull this up. B-2 Spirit range. Let me make sure that I got this right. Yeah, the range of this thing is about, at least I saw really quickly there, it was around 6,800 something, well, actually, according to nautical mile range, 6,000 miles, but full range of a B-2 Spirit is around 6.9 thousand miles. So going off of that, the aircraft can easily make the round trip from Diego Garcia to Iran, but it may be the case, once again, it's not like they take straight shot flights like a commercial airliner straight to Tehran and back. It may be the case that they may have to loiter outside of Iranian airspace for a moment in the Arabian Sea, be refueled, and then fly into Iran, and then just orbit over their targets until everything else is in place, and then they begin the bombing operations. That may also be highly likely. That seems to be a very likely sort of a reason as to why there would be that many KC-135s there, or the KC-135s may have pretty much helped the B-2s get to the airbase, and then they're going to be leaving, and then they will do the one-and-done trips straight to Iran and back, really without stopping or loitering for incredibly long periods of time over Iran.
Yeah, that could be it. That's that. It would be a very big operation, by the way. Like this looks to be like a lot of stuff, a lot of assets, a lot of tankers, B2s, and everything. And like we said before, I don't think this is for the Houthis. This looks like a massive amount of force that is going to probably be used against Iran. It's just crazy to see this much force just sitting by and waiting for something like that to go down. So I'll be very curious to see exactly how large of an operation this is going to be, because it looks like its preparations for basically like an entire full-scale war, if you ask me.
Man, I got to tell you, man, I heard that they actually came up with a new commercial flight today, Matty. Have you heard about it?
What is it?
They call it the Diego Flyer. From Diego Garcia to Tehran, straight, a nonstop express flight. Like, no connections.
That's a very expensive flight right there. I've heard it cost in the billions.
I've heard that it's been a pretty expensive one. I also heard that apparently you never land at the airport. They just drop you onto it, and then they fly back. It's a really interesting kind of a commercial flight, and I think we're going to see it put into service here really soon. But still, best of luck to those B-2 Spirit pilots, because, once again, I don't think they're there for the Houthis. I think they're there for Iran. It seems to make the most sense at this point. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news, it is time for us to move on into the Western Pacific. We were able to see that a Japanese warship arrived in the Philippines today. Look at it. It's the Japanese ship Noshiro. There it is right there. You can hear the Filipino band playing for it. Honestly, I'd rather not. They're not the greatest band, but you can see the Japanese, I believe this is a Corvette, moving into the harbor here in Manila. I gotta say, that thing's pretty clean.
You know what Manila is really known for?
Vanilla.
No, those really exquisite file folders, those Manilas.
Man, I got to tell you that too. I mean, I thought you would make something rhyme with Manila, so I said vanilla. But Manila folders, actually, that's a lot better, man. You were thinking there. You were thinking. But also, you know something else that the Philippines is known for, Matthew? You know something that they're really known for?
What's that?
It's for their food. They have pretty good food in the Philippines. You know, it's good stuff. It's worth eating sometime. I would like to have Filipino food one day. I've heard it's actually pretty decent. But moving on from the Philippines and that statement, I was going to try and make a joke and then I couldn't. So I was like, well, honestly, they do have good food. But moving on from that and into North Korea, we got to see something very interesting today. The great leader of North Korea, the great and glorious leader of North Korea, the great, glorious, and illustrious leader of North Korea, and so on and so forth, apparently unveiled a new aircraft today for the North Korean People's Air Force, or the People's Air Force of Korea. It's this one. And I gotta tell you, it's a little bit interesting. Apparently, it's an IL-76 that's been modified into that of an airborne early warning aircraft. And I gotta tell you, that's a little interesting right there. And I gotta say this. Isn't that just an A-50 mainstay that's been, like, repainted?
It looks like it could be, actually.
Let's look at the supporting columns for the AWACS boom on the A-50. So let's see here. Let me go see if I can get some pictures of the A-50. So its supporting boom on some aircraft is double-strutted. And like the best French champagne, it's vintage dated. And this is an A-50 mainstay.
It looks like it could be. I would agree with you.
It doesn't look like it could be. It is. Like, those supporting beams right there are the exact same width and shape on this one. They did. Here's what happened, folks. Here's what happened. The North Koreans didn't build this. The North Koreans don't have the ability to build this. The Russians just gave them one. Like, that's what happened here. They repainted it into North Korean Air Force livery, and then they just sent it over. North Korea has never produced an aircraft domestically at all. So it'd be a little bit weird for them to say, oh, by the way, not only did we completely modify this IL-76, we also turned it into an AWACS. No way in hell did they do that. They also, on top of that, they never made a radar system in their life ever. All of their radar systems were imported from the Soviet Union or the People's Republic of China, or the Russian Federation in the modern day. So it's a little bit stupid for them to say that they built this thing, or the North Koreans at least, because it's like they didn't. They didn't build it. This is given to them by the Russians. The Russians have A-50 mainstays. They gave them one. But anyways, moving on from that, we also did get to see that he watched a drone dropping munitions onto a target. You know, welcome to the 21st century. They still really don't have a grasp on how the whole 21st century thing works. They're still largely stuck in the 19th century, but oh well. And also we got to see these mock-ups. They had a mock-up of an Abrams, which looked like trash, because I've never seen an Abrams with an upper glacis that big. That looks like a modified T-55 possibly back there. Honestly, the turret wasn't a bad job, though. They actually kind of got that... Hold up. Wait a minute. Hold up, folks. Hold up, wait a minute. I gotta look at this. Yeah, they actually did get it somewhat close. They actually got the one of the imaging systems on the right side is a little bit too big, but it's close enough. And they also put the grenade dischargers on it. That's like the grenade dischargers for an M1A1HC, though. Not the normal grenade dischargers that we see on, say, this Abrams. A little bit interesting with that. But also, they made an M1128 mobile gun system mock-up as well. I don't know what they used to make that. It looks like it may have been a BTR of some kind. But it actually is a little bit interesting that they modeled that M1128 incredibly well. I mean, they even have the hatches for the gunner and the commander in the, like, the turret nub below the actual automatic gun system. So that's a little bit interesting that they actually did get that one down. The Abrams, though, is busted, but the M1128 actually doesn't look that bad, at least for a mock-up.
How are they able to make this stuff if they don't really have any resources? It's a very, like, poor country, so they don't have much money. So how are they making any equipment at all under those circumstances? Oh my God, you're gonna pull up plywood, man? It's just plywood.
It's plywood. Yeah, these are mock-ups, man. Like, they didn't make these to be operational. These are mock-ups to shoot at. But these are high-quality mock-ups because you can actually see that they even added grab irons onto the M1128. Like, that actually is, let's see, pretty impressive. Like, they actually did pay a lot of attention to detail when designing this mock-up here. Because if you notice, there are some, well, not really grab irons, but more so crane hooks. Well, places where crane hooks could be attached. Sadly, I forgot the names of those. Maybe grab irons, probably not. But they did add a couple of those. And we can also see that they have the headlight configuration correct for the large part. They have the driver's hatch correctly modeled. It doesn't appear that they understand where the engine bay is, because there's another hatch right there where the engine bay is in a Striker. Doesn't appear that they got that right, but they did get the turret config right, because you can see where the gunner and the gunner and the commander are, and it looks like they actually modeled that pretty well on that. They also got the back of the turret shape largely correct, so it's a little bit interesting to see that they did get that right. Then again, though, it simply takes them going onto Google and pulling up an M1128 to get a reference. Like, there's plenty of pictures of them. It's not like it's incredibly secret or anything, but pretty interesting to note that they actually did put in a lot of effort to make a plywood mock-up of an Abrams and an M1128. So, once again, just neat. It was just neat to note that. But still, they got an A-50 from the Russians. That's really the biggest thing to get out of what happened in North Korea today. Moving on from that and out of North Korea, it is time for us to move on back into Iran, because we were able to hear that according to the U.S. Strategic Command, Iran has expanded its nuclear program by increasing its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. Iran has also reduced the time required to produce weapons-grade uranium for a nuclear device to less than 1 week, at least according to U.S. Strategic Command. A fairly concerning development in the statement by U.S. Strategic Command. Moving on from that and into Eastern Europe as a whole, or really Europe as a whole, we were able to hear that Zelensky did arrive today in Paris for a diplomatic conference with Macron. We can see that right here. We can see the meeting. Taking pictures.
The French are known for their excellence.
Oh, the French. They've always been known for their excellence. There is a California champagne inspired by that same French excellence.
It's a much different reception here in France for Zelensky than it was in the United States, I must say.
Oh, yes. Very different indeed. Inspired by that same French excellence. But we also were able to hear that a 2 billion euro military package is going to be provided to Ukraine for munitions and weaponry provided by the Republic of France. Moving on from that and on into Ukraine itself, we also have some pretty interesting news here today. First, before we get into that, I thought I'd show you all this. This is a little interesting. The gravediggers are busy in Russia, and we also got to see that while he was busy, there was a military funeral going on in the background, suggesting that casualties are, well, fatalities are incredibly high in the Russian army currently.
Oh, that music's busted.
Man, it's like, you know what I wanted at a funeral? A polka band.
Man, that's crazy they're playing at a funeral.
That is actually rough.
That is terrible.
You see a fresh
That's
grave.
just horrible.
Man, that is rough, honestly. I'd be like, I'll have the military honors, spare the band. I think I'm good. Moving on from the kazoo funeral music, it's time for us to move on down into Romania, as we were able to hear that apparently, according to the former Ukrainian army commander Zaluzny, he claimed that the Romanians asked him to keep silent about drones that fell on its territory. According to Zaluzny, as a direct quote, they understand that there is no fifth article of the NATO treaty, and there never was. Poland understands this, where our missiles periodically fall than Russian ones. Romania in general understands everything but is silent. Meaning that the Romanians really didn't make a big deal out of the drones hitting their territory because they largely were under the assumption that that NATO as a whole really wouldn't uphold Article 5 anyways, so they didn't make a big problem out of it because they didn't want to show possibly how weak the NATO Article 5 provocations were. But moving on from that and into the area of Kyiv, we were able to hear the air defense report, and overnight 117 drones attacked Ukraine, 56 of them were shot down, and 45 drones missed their targets. We didn't get any real reports on electronic warfare interference last night, so I really can't make a statement on that. But moving on from that and up into the area of tkaing, near to the area of the Kursk Oblast, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian outpost inside of the grain elevators in tkaing again. This is like the 30th time they've done it. Eventually that Russian outpost will get taken out, but we're about to see the bombs hit it dead on here in a second. Oh! Get on the nail.
Jeez.
Whoa. Look at that grain elevator.
Man, that was a boiler.
And that's the end of that clip. But moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see further down the border a Russian recon group getting wiped out by the Ukrainians. This was on the Sumy border, of course in the Kursk Oblast, but near to the Sumy border. And the Ukrainians decided to take out this little Russian recon group before they could recon too much. And there goes 3 of them, so it appears that there's only 1 guy left. Oh, you see the 1 guy that's left, he's just kind of sitting there.
Just kind of reminiscing about the whole event.
Man, he's over there going, what the? Like, it's a wonderful day in Russia, blade.
Oh, what the I'm in deep shit now.
Oh, and it looks like he will not be reconning any longer. It appears that the whole squad was wiped. I gotta say, man, that actually was a bit of a shock. They made sure to take out the last guy standing.
It's like a bad video game, The Last Man Standing, but he was actually the main character.
Man, he had main character syndrome, and he paid for it. He was just going to stand there like, this should not bother me, and then they dropped a bomblet on him. It's like, well, I think it will. But moving on from that clip near to the Sumy border and on into Kursk, we also got to see a Ukrainian MiG-29 dropping more hammers on the Russians. For those of y'all who may not be antiquated, not antiquated, familiar with the hammer, I don't know why my use of the English language is getting worse over time. If you are not familiar with the hammer is a bomb produced by the French that is guided on its own. It's a fire and forget bomb. Some of them are rocket assisted. It's pretty neat. Well, you see the smoke rising there from the impact. And we can see the smoke continuing to rise. It looks like it was a successful hit. The hammers never miss. but a very impressive hit nevertheless. Moving on from that now, the Kursk area, and on down into our location unknowns, we had some pretty interesting ones. First, we got to see that Magyar's birds hit a BMP and an MTLB in the same spot in the tree line, and the results were shocking. Explosive even.
Oh, jeez.
And we see one guy getting flight miles there, and we can now see the view from the drone as it was hitting the MTLB and the BMP. You see it lining up for the hit. This is actually a special variant of the MTLB. It appears to be the command variant. I guess they weren't commanding much of that today.
Damn. That was a huge explosion.
That was pretty impressive right there. We now see them once again showing the video from another angle. Magyar's famous for that. We get like 9 replays on a Magyar clip. Oh, actually, that's them actually filming it when it was hit, and it sounds like this guy couldn't believe it, man. It sounded like he hit the touchdown at the Super Bowl.
Damn, he was in disbelief. Oh,
yeah, baby! But it was an impressive hit. We'll be cutting the clip there because it's really just, recapping the whole thing 9,000 times. But still amazing to see that Magyar's birds were able to accomplish that. Meanwhile, we also got to see this picture of some Ukrainian F-16s in the sky. Look at that.
That is beautiful, I must say. Very beautiful.
Man, I gotta say, very impressive little picture here, and nice to see the Ukrainian F-16s out there in the skies. It appears that they were loaded out with AIM-9Ms, it seems, and AIM-120s, an air-to-air loadout, meaning that they were most likely conducting missile and drone interceptions when this video was being made, or were conducting air patrols for the large part. But moving on from that little clip right there, and on into our next one, we also got to see this little cute dog sitting in front of an AS-90, and that is one cute puppy right there. Look at that thing.
Dog. I like that dog right there. That's a fluffy one.
Man, it's a very fluffy dog. Very nice to see. Sitting in front of a British-made AS-90 SPG that is able to fire a 155mm high-explosive shell over a course of about 17 miles or so. A pretty impressive SPG, but once again, very cute little pupper right there, too. Little pats for the pupper right there. We love to see the puppies. But moving on from that and on to the next clip, we also got to see a little bit of a hard landing being conducted by the Russians today in Novi Urengoy. I just didn't want to find where Novi Urengoy was. I just didn't care to. So I put in the location unknowns. But it was one hell of a hard landing. That's the kind of landing you get with Ryanair right there.
That was a damn hard landing right there. That was a smack.
Man. More than a smack, man. That was so hard right there. It was something. I would have to say that. We're going to stop the joke right there. But moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report. And,
Hey, look. Whoa. They got one Bobcat skid steer today. They added one to the repertoire. And I must say that's a very nice addition there to make it 3,786. Very nice. But Enforcer, tell us more.
Man, I got to say, a very impressive casualty report today. According to Ms. Disa, the keeper of the records, all categories are below averages for March to date. And another light day after some huge numbers recently. But still, the numbers are decent. We've just gotten spoiled here. The Ukrainians have really done a number on the Russians for some time. But moving on to the casualty report, 1,280 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 15 APCs, 77 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 17 artillery pieces, 59 drones, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was a pretty impressive day, and we love to see it. Moving on from that and into the front lines, we did get to see up in the Kupiansk area that the Russian forces were getting hit pretty heavily. And we can see them here hitting a Zala. Zala Zala Zing, Zala Zala Bing. They got it. We also got to see them hitting this weird abomination. Couldn't tell if that was an Orlan or something else, as I just, in the middle of saying that, got tinnitus and my ears are ringing uncontrollably. Matthew, was there some kind of a gunshot nearby? Because, dang, man, my ears are ringing.
No gunshot that I've heard, at least.
While moving on from that, though, we did get to see the Ukrainians knocking out more Russians in the Kupiansk area with FPVs. We see them hitting this guy here. He was carrying a jerry can. Call him Jerry because he's booming. We can see them hitting another vehicle right there and a main battle tank. It appears that they hit that up in the cope cage, though. The damage was most likely superficial. And it appears that it was because they had to hit it a second time.
This is the revenge group, by the way. They're getting revenge in this group.
Man, they're getting that revenge.
Pirovang.
And we see them hitting some Urals. The Ukrainians are turning them into urinals. We can also see them hitting a Hamas. And we see a Russian running from this Ural. He already knew it was coming. And he didn't want to be around for it, I'll tell you that. And we see them hitting more Russian forces here. More and more and more of them.
Well, looks like we have a little fire.
Oh, a little fire and fury. Fire and fury. Moving on from that and on from that little clip right there in the northern front, and moving further on down and into the area of Shesiv Yar, we actually got to see some pictures of the Rubish in action. The 4th Brigade, the one that actually drove the Russians from the field at the airfield at Hostomel. Take a look at them. They're down here on the front, in the trenches, fighting through and through. An impressive unit. Very cool one. And also, I like that sniper right there. That appears to be a higher caliber one. I assume maybe a 12.7, possibly. I can't really tell, though. But moving on from that and out of that little series of pictures right there and down into Toretsk. Well, actually, we already covered the news in Toretsk and Pokrovsk. So moving on from that and down towards Volodar, we actually get to see life on the Russian front. Look, this is a destroyed car, blade. Look.
Oh, блядь.
This is another one, blade. And there's the third one, blade. He's like, it's not great here. Also, we can see some sort of like a BP oil spill schlick over here in the left side of the camera. Love to see it. BP still terrorizing the woods. but anyways.
Все нормально. А то все говорите, что мы здесь хорошо живем.
If he pushes out that chin line any further, when an FPV comes down, it'll hit that instead of his nose.
В подвалах вообще засыпает, бомбят нас. Вот валяется.
We have a RPG round stuck into the floor near to a Aquafina water bottle. Which one's more dangerous? You tell me. But that's the end of those clips right there. Very nice to see. And moving on from that and on down into Feodosia in Crimea, we actually get to see that more Kuksan SPGs are on the way. The North Koreans are filling the Russians up with useless garbage for the large part, in my honest opinion. Because Kuksan SPGs are yesteryear's military equipment. They've been in service since the late 60s in North Korea, and they still are largely considered to be combat ineffective in the modern day due to their inaccuracy. But meanwhile, in Dnipro, we did get to see that unfortunately a major attack did hit the city. A large amount of drones ended up hitting civilian infrastructure and citizens throughout the entirety of the city. We have not been able to get a casualty report yet on the situation in Dnipro, but it does appear that the city was hit quite horrendously. Meanwhile, at Inaherdar, we also heard that apparently some of the fuel reserves for the generators in the area have apparently leaked. And according to what we got from War Translated, a diesel fuel reservoir has been damaged at the occupied ZMPP. According to the spokesperson of the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the amount of spilled fuel could have kept the plant's emergency generators running for 25 days. According to a direct quote, this incident is a direct result of Russia's reckless replacement of licensed Ukrainian experts with unqualified temporary Russian operatives. The Russians not only stole the nuclear power plant, but are also incapable of ensuring its basic safety. And according to that, I'd have to say that that's high certainty at this point. But before we move on down into Kherson, I did see that just a moment ago, Zelensky claims that Putin will die soon and the war will end. And a lot of people are wondering, will Putin's death end the war? And it seems that a decent amount of people are actually believing that that's the case. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So it looks like 57% of the audience said yes, that would end the war. And 23% said there's a 50-50 chance of it. And 14% said no, that would not end the war. And that was a pretty big claim that Zelensky made right there. He said Putin will die soon. So, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. However, it's a little bit confusing because it's not sure if Zelensky's going to be the one taking him out or if Putin is maybe ill and maybe he's going to be dying soon anyway. So, honestly, in my opinion, it would depend on who is the who is the upcoming person who's going to become the president. And honestly, the choices are not very good because there's Medvedev, who's always hanging around, and he's a raging lunatic. So he would be quite bad. And pretty much everybody else that's under Putin's circle is also a raging lunatic. So it's really hard to tell if Putin's death would end the war. It might cause some temporary hiccups in the war, but I think they might actually carry it on beyond Putin, to be honest. So I'm actually with the 14%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it's a little bit hard to say. I actually would have to say there's a 50-50 chance. It really depends on who Putin's predecessor, well, not predecessor, successor would be. If Putin's successor is Medvedev, I'd actually say, much like Matthew, the war probably would go on for some time. If he wasn't really like Medvedev and he was someone else entirely unknown who just rose up from out of nowhere like most Russian leaders do, then I would largely say that we may see that the war would end. Usually a big thing for some Russian leaders is to pretty much reverse everything that the last guy did. Look at Khrushchev and Stalin, look at Gorbachev and Yeltsin, and look at Yeltsin and Putin. Totally different leaders doing totally different things for the large part, at least as far as their policies and foreign initiatives were concerned. But with that, I hope that does address it, in my opinion, fairly well. And moving on down into Kherson, we did get to see that the Ukrainians were hitting Russian forces down on the river. It doesn't appear that the Russians can even go fishing and catch a break, because it looks like they were fishing and all they caught were bombs and straight left hooks from the Ukrainians. We can see them here in their little fishing boat, and there goes the bomblet right into the middle of the cab. It looks like a lot of Russians ended up catching more than fish. They caught shrapnel.
They're catching a lot of stuff they shouldn't be catching. I tell you what, they're fishing for all the wrong things.
Man, the Fish and Wildlife wardens are probably going to cite them for catching shrapnel without a permit.
Honestly, they got no license.
Man, I'm telling you, man, they really don't. But that's the end of the clip right there. Very nice to see that they were hitting them and knocking them on out. And moving on from that into Odessa, we also got to see the air defense groups around Odessa doing their work in the night and shooting down a couple of drones. See them shooting some of them down right here. We can see them firing at them through the infrared. We see them getting one of them right there. Oh, and they got it dead on the nail. Holy moly.
Smack, smack.
And that's the end of that clip, but still impressive to see them shooting down a decent number of drones over the city of Odessa. Moving on up into Kyiv, y'all aren't going to believe it. And Matthew, I hate to tell you this, there's going to be no restroom break for you tonight. Or me. There's no speech from Zelensky today because he was off in Paris. So we do not get a break here on this show. No siree, Bob. We have to go straight into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a stream it's been. We actually didn't get a lot of viewers tonight, which is a little interesting. It still was a lot, I do want to say that. But it wasn't the large amount of viewers that we've been getting for weeks on end. We had 8.3 thousand people here tonight. And there's still 7.5 thousand people here right now. And only about 40,000 people have watched so far. In most senses, at least according to the Enforcer channel's metrics, this is a nice little chit-chat with the folks, like back at home. This isn't like half of the world watching, or at least half of YouTube watching every single night. A little bit interesting with that, but still, it feels nice and homey, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, because we don't really get to talk to smaller audiences a lot these days. Usually we're talking to crowds near to 10,000 in size, or larger than that, or over 100,000 people on every single show every single night. So it actually is kind of nice to have these, because it honestly takes a load off of my shoulders. Even still, like, just being honest, even still after 3 years of doing this, when massive crowds come in, I feel like there's a decent amount of pressure to make sure to perform. And so tonight, that pressure wasn't really there all too much, which is still crazy because that's still 8.4 thousand people. And when you think about that, that's a lot. That's still like a football stadium of people. But oh well, I mean, you know, it wasn't the massive crowds that we've had recently. So I'm happy to be here. But beyond that, with that, it is time for us to get on into that second segment, Matthew, and I understand that we have much to talk about. And also, I see some people saying, hey, it's hump day. Hey, it is hump day. And you know something, the Master Cylinder, it is hump day. And you know something that we did in celebration of hump day today? Matthew, you know what it was. You know what it was.
Wait, the train yard, the train yard.
Yeah, we went to the hump yard for like, I think it was like 30 minutes, but we actually... but we actually were kind of lucky there, because we went down to the hump yard, and let me send this to Matthew over Twitter here, because I got the pictures, and the pictures were busting, actually. They were busting, I'll tell you, because we actually saw something kind of neat. I thought I'd show it to y'all, because it's actually rare. It's one of a kind sort of a deal. And let me go see here. Yeah, there we go. Let me go put these up on Discord here, so that way I can show y'all. We went down to the rail yard, and we actually saw something fairly rare. Now, in the modern day, there is something that a lot of railroad companies do where they create something called a heritage unit. And a heritage unit is a train that's been painted up to the paint job of an older company that merged into theirs that doesn't exist anymore. And we actually saw a really cool one today. It was one of the Wabash Railroad right there. Actually, very clean looking. I took these pictures myself with my own hand. Look at the professionalism there. I mean, these pictures were framed incredibly well. Very clean, as a matter of fact. And you see that paint job, and that paint job was clean. It was very clean, actually. I quite liked it. I thought that was a very clean one, for sure. So we did that for, like, I think it was, like, 20 minutes. We were very lucky. There's only one train like this in the entirety of the United States that's painted up in this paint job, and we saw it. Very classy looking, I'll admit. And it's a shame that the company liveries of the modern day don't look like that, because I actually do have to say, this one was clean, very clean. And also, Scott Graves said, Wabash Cannonball? Yeah, you're right. That actually is the company that had the Wabash Cannonball, is this Wabash Railroad. The Wabash Railroad doesn't exist anymore. It was merged when Norfolk and Western merged with Southern Railway to create Norfolk Southern. So they don't exist anymore, but they did exist for a time, and they were largely up in the Rust Belt area, in between Detroit and Kansas City. It was kind of that area that they were running trains in. But anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed looking at that, just as a little side note there before we get into the question segment at large. And also, someone said, you took non-vertical photos. Yeah, I always take non-vertical photos. Portrait just is terrible. Landscape is the only way to take good pictures. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. I hope you all enjoyed looking at that fairly well. And with that, it's time for us to get into these questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so it's now time for the final question segment of the night. And of course, it is the most highly anticipated part of the stream every single night. But it's time to start chatting. But we are now fresh out of polls, actually. We have no more polls to get to, but we do love the polls, and we encourage the polls to have confidence that they can defend their country for longer than 14 days. That's the only thing I've ever said to ever criticize the polls, is have a little extra confidence. So hopefully they will, and we do love the polls anyway. But anyways, we are now jumping on to our first Super Chat of the last segment. And this one is going to go to Janet Roski, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Janet, for the first ever Super Chat on a live stream. And we appreciate that very much, Janet. And Janet said, can you break it down Barney style? Barney style, what? And also what the U.S. national interest is in aiding Ukraine. And I have been unable to explain it to people who are against spending money to aid Ukraine, let alone arm them to win.
That's an interesting question. I don't know what Barney style means, but I'm going to try and speak about it in the simplest terms that I can. America is a business. The whole country is a business in itself. And what we want to do is we want to make money. Because money means prosperity. And prosperity is good. Less money is bad. We do not want to make less money. We want to make more money. We want to benefit the shareholders of America. And the shareholders are the citizens themselves. The voting citizens of this grand republic are our shareholders. So, to be able to make money, our company sometimes has to make investments into goods, or sometimes we have to make investments into our customers, or sometimes our suppliers to create our goods. And one of our major customers and suppliers are the Europeans. They're some of our greatest customers that we've ever had. No one could ask for better customers than the Europeans. We get a lot of great things from them. They get a lot of great things from us. We get Linda's chocolate, BMWs, Mercedes, you name it, we get it from the Europeans. And in exchange, they get a Ford Fiesta. That's not a bad trade, you know, like it could be worse, you know, like you could get nothing. But beyond that, they also get this thing called military assurances and protections from the United States as a part of our little exchange here. It's an investment of ours. We put some defensive efforts into them. They give us some really cool goods. It's a pretty decent deal. But the problem is that there's this big guy, this asshole called the Russians, that are out there and they're trying to knock around our customers a little bit and our suppliers. And they can start to hurt us business-wise. We got to be there for our customers. We got to show that we care about them. Because if we don't care about them, they're not going to be selling us their goods and we aren't going to be selling them ours, and everyone's going to be making a lot less money. So what we got to do is that we got to go out there and we got to knock the Russians around a little bit to show that we care for the Europeans and that they ought to be doing business with us rather than the Chinese, because they will go to the Chinese if they have no other choice. So right now, the Europeans are concerned that Ukraine's getting steamrolled and it's going to move on to them. So our business investment in the region right now is to go in there, invest into the Ukrainians, help them out a good bit in beating the Russians around, so that way we can show not only to Ukraine, which is kind of a side note here, but more so to the entirety of Europe, that we're a pretty good guy to do business with. You know, we provide protection without protection payments. I mean, what better arrangement could you ask for right there? So that largely is how it works. You got to invest to have customers and suppliers. You know something that's crazy, folks? Here's something that's crazy. It works just like any other business. You know, like America is just like a business when you think about it on a major scale. Because think about it. If you didn't have a buy one, get one free at Walmart, but Publix always had a buy one, get one free, who the hell is the customer going to go buy from? Matthew, you tell me, who's the customer going to buy it from? Are they going to buy from Walmart, or are they going to buy from Publix if Walmart's got no buy one, get one frees and Publix has got all the buy one, get one frees?
Well, I mean, it depends. Some people refuse to go to Walmart no matter what the price is. So if you're kind of like that, you might pay the higher price and go back to Publix. But if you have a lot of saving dollar in your blood, like you want to save a little bit of dollars here and there, you might go to Walmart.
Now, that might be true, but the thing is, though, Matthew, we're not talking about, like, the reality of the thing. We're just talking about the buy one, get one frees. Like, if Walmart has no buy one, get one frees, and then Publix does, who do you think people are going to go to?
Honestly, I don't even do those. I'd probably just go to either one.
Well, I mean, like, most people would probably go to the place to get the buy one.
I'm just messing with you. I'll go to Walmart, obviously.
Oh, well, they're not giving you any buy. Anyways, moving on from that, because Matthew's disproven my entire claim. Most people would go to the place that's giving you the buy one, get one frees. So that's largely what we kind of have to do with the Europeans, is that we have to provide them the buy one, get one frees, because then they're going to be liking us a lot better. Or more so, we have to show them that there's some sort of an incentive to continue to have dealings with us instead of the Chinese. That's largely the way they deal with it. So with that, I hope that does address that well.
Also, by the way, Enforcer, the problem with the analogy is that even with the buy one, get one freeze, Walmart, I think, is still cheaper, because I think I've done the math before, than Publix. So that's where the problem came in with the answer.
Well, it still was worth it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running. But it was supposed to be just kind of on the face of it, Matthew. We weren't supposed to be getting into, like, the nitty-gritty weeds with it. It was supposed to just be a simplified example. But oh well. Anyways, with that, I think it wants to give us support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chats are going to go to Gunfox, who puts in 3 $20 supports. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for the 3 super chats and helping to keep the channel for a total of about $60 in support. And we do appreciate it, Gunfox. And he has the days in history for us today. He said, in 1351, 30 of the best knights from France and 30 from England fight with spears, axes, and daggers over who will rule Brittany. In 1920, Princeton dropout and car roof repairman F. Scott Fitzgerald sees his first novel. Also, 1812, earthquake measuring 7.7 on the Richter scale destroys 90% of Caracas, Venezuela, and kills an estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people. 1909, Russian military forces invade northern Persia. Also, the STS-45 was a 1992 NASA Space Shuttle mission using the Space Shuttle Atlantis. Its almost 9-day scientific mission was with a non-deployable payload of instruments, and it was the 46th shuttle mission and the 11th for Atlantis. And question from the chat.
I gotta thank you so much for the support, and very interesting to hear about that Atlantis mission. Also, Matthew, could we have a breakdown of those one by one, so that way we could rabbit hole on them instead of me having to try and remember 90 of them? So could we have that one by one?
So his first one was about the 1351, the 30 of the best knights from France and 30 from England fighting with the spears, the axes, and the daggers. That was the first one.
Very interesting right there. And let's see here. Brittany. So that would be this area over here of France. This is the Brittany region. This is Normandy, by the way, and I forgot what the area around Calais is called. I don't think it's a part of Normandy. It's I actually think that's a part of Burgundy, which existed along the French-Belgian border for a while. Burgundy now doesn't exist anymore. Crazily enough, there's like almost no reference to Burgundy anywhere, even in that area, which is kind of crazy because Burgundy was such an important kingdom during the time, and there's practically no hair in their hide of their existence at this point in the modern day. But beyond that, very interesting to hear about that, and I got to thank you for sharing that. And also, let's see, F. Scott Fitzgerald sells his first novel. Actually, interesting enough, he lived in Montgomery, Alabama for a while in the F. Scott Fitzgerald house. That's what it's called now. It wasn't called that back then because he hadn't lived in it yet. But here it is. That is that. I don't know why they put that creepy picture of them right there, but that's the house that he lived in for a while in Montgomery, Alabama. And interesting enough, there's also a road in Montgomery, Alabama, named after his wife Zelda, which is Zelda Road right there, which is named after F. Scott Fitzgerald's wife. Actually, pretty interesting stuff right there. They like F. Scott Fitzgerald down there. But I got to be honest with you, F. Scott Fitzgerald's book, The Great Gatsby, I'm not going to lie, I think it was overinflated hot air. That was a wildly boring book to read in high school. I don't even know why it's like really like a cult classic, because I just never really got the appeal to it. It was kind of like Grapes of Wrath, like which also, well, no, not Grapes of Wrath, of Mice and Men, which also I feel like was kind of like an overblown book for what it is, because it wasn't that great of a book. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one on that. But Matthew, what do you think about those books?
Honestly, to me, I think they kind of like they're good for what they are, but me personally, not my thing very much. They were honestly like a lot of those books from like I had to read in high school were kind of like haunting, like they stuck in your memory, like that of Mice and Men thing. It's like, what the hell was the point of reading this? It's like, I'd have preferred not to have read this actually. So I just didn't enjoy it really, and also like the whole Great Gatsby thing, I honestly didn't care for any of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I didn't really care for them that much either. Also, by the way, someone said Burgundy was in central France. I mean, like, technically you're not wrong, but at least what I was thinking about in the area of Calais, because here's a map of the Kingdom of Burgundy, or the Burgundian state, is most of the heart of Burgundy was actually somewhere along the French-Belgian border up in this northern area. You can see the Duchy of Luxembourg right there, which still actually survives to this day as the Kingdom of Luxembourg, which is actually a little bit cool. But beyond that, this area around Calais, you can actually see Calais right there, is a part of the Kingdom of Burgundy for the large part. So that's what I was thinking when I was talking about that. And also you can see Picardy right there, which is, I guess, where they got the name for Picard in the Star Trek series. But beyond that, it is pretty neat when you look at it, where the Kingdom of Burgundy was, because it really was everywhere. I mean, it really was just where the classical French-German border would be. And when I say classical, I mean like the pre-Franco-Prussian War border. So let me go, actually no, the post-Franco-Prussian border. Let me go get that really quickly and show that. Because that little tip of France that exists right here is called Alsace-Lorraine, and for a little while after the Franco-Prussian War, that wasn't a part of France. Well, here we go. Here's a good map that shows that. And it's a very low graphical quality, but you can still see right there where France lost Alsace-Lorraine, and they had more so of like a curve instead of a point in that area of the border. And interestingly enough, the border of the Kingdom of Burgundy actually followed that path, and Alsace-Lorraine was largely more so in the Holy Roman Empire than it was the Kingdom of France at that time. Pretty cool with that. So technically you're kind of right, but still a large bulk of the Burgundian state was more so up in the area of Pas-de-Calais, and also the Belgian states, or really Flanders and Wallonia. But beyond that, still, you're somewhat correct, but I was still talking about the bulk of that area along the French coast. But anyways, moving on from that, those books were terrible. I just didn't like them. And also, Matthew, do you remember the Scarlet Ibis?
No, I don't remember that one.
You don't remember that one about like the two brothers, and the little brother had a heart condition to where if he got freaked out or panicked, his heart would explode.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you
I remember that one.
I was like, what the hell? Like, what was the point of reading that? It was like, I was a dick to my little brother, and I ran away, and his heart exploded, and he died. It's like, what was the point of reading that? I was like, I don't even get it. Like I didn't get it at all. There was like no lesson learned from that book that they even told you, like, don't mess with your brothers, like, or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, pretty effed up. Anyways, moving on. I was like, what is the point of reading these stories? But also, let's see, there were a couple of others that I just didn't get either. And also didn't like how, like, you were always forced to find some sort of a meaning to everything. Like, like sometimes authors just have to set the scene for you. Like, they were in front of a house that looked like this. And then your English teacher would be like, okay, so the house is Victorian era in style. So what is that supposed to represent? It's like, like, it could just be a house. Like, we live in a house. It's like, our house doesn't represent a damn thing about us. It's like maybe everything in a story doesn't have to have symbology to it. Because it's like when you're recounting a story sometimes to your folks, do you always sit there and have a meaning behind everything? Like, you know, do you be like, are you like, oh, we walked up to this house and it was fairly basic looking. Is that supposed to mean that that person's personality was bland? It's like, no, it's just how the house looked. You know, it's just to kind of give you a little bit more detail, a little bit more filler to make the book a little bit thicker, so that way it looks like it was better to buy. You know, it's like, that's the honest truth. But beyond that, those books, rough stuff. But moving on from that, and into the next little bit, let's see, STS-45. STS-45, let's go take a gander at STS-45. We got to take a little gander at STS-45. Oh, look at that.
Oh, wow, that's pretty neat.
It is pretty neat. That's pretty cool right there. And let's see here. That was the crew configuration in the cockpit. It's a little interesting how the crew configuration was sometimes different in each shuttle for each mission. But beyond that, pretty neat. Let's see here. Let's see, space almost 9-day scientific mission, non-deployable payload of instruments, 46 shuttle mission, and the 11th for Atlantis. That's pretty cool. And moving on from that, in 1812, an earthquake measuring 7.7 on the Richter scale destroyed 90% of Caracas in Venezuela. Let's go to Caracas. Let's take a look at it. Yes, Caracas, the capital of Venezuela. Not really a great place anymore, they say. Socialism kind of killed it. But, beyond that, let's take a look at the city. Oh, yes. I see you know your Venezuelans. Well, oh, wait a minute, hold up. Oh, I can't zoom in on that picture. That's a shame. Oh, dude, look! Macaws.
Oh, that's a very fine bird right there. That's almost as fine as that B-2 bird.
Man, that's quite a nice bird right there. I wonder how they taste. I wonder if they're good. Oh my.
Oh man, that's tough.
Skid Row right there, man. That's literally like Skid Row in LA. But let's see here. What else do we have? Most of these pictures we can't really zoom in on. There's like no detail to them. La Previsora. That's an interesting hotel right there. It's kind of shaped like a wedge. Like very observant of me. I'm Captain Obvious here. But let's see. Bro, they got the things.
They really do. Like, that's the weirdest looking buildings ever.
Man, I'll be honest with you, man. I haven't seen much like that before. Honestly, Caracas, it looks very rough in some places, and it kind of, oh, look, there's the slums back there. Never mind. I was about to say it's kind of all right, I guess, but yeah, that's not that great. Still, anyways, it's interesting to hear that it was destroyed 90% of the way. I would say that probably wouldn't be hard to do in the modern day because, once again, most of the city is built pretty much like a slum. So, you know, if an earthquake comes through, I don't think a lot of these buildings would survive. And also, in 1909, the Russian military invades northern Persia. And that's a very interesting thing to hear. I actually do not remember that one, and I don't recall that one, so that's actually new to me right there. I actually have nothing to say on that, and that's news to me. But beyond that, we will make sure to take a question from the chat. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the question from the chat in honor of Gunfox, and we did remember it tonight. This one goes to Eric Kress, who says, why they were out themselves and not in a group in Lithuania that close to the Belarusian border?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't know the answer to that. I wasn't there in the field, so what we're working with is just the information that we have at hand, and of course we extrapolate a lot to try and examine the story that we got earlier on. I wouldn't really know how in the world they fell into a body of water and then they had to go and find them and then figure out what happened to the crew. All that's a bit of a mystery to me. I'm sure that there will be an official inquiry by the Army to figure out what happened, or an accident investigation to see what happened and see if anyone was at fault, if they even find anyone in the first place. If they don't really find anyone, there will only be minimal amounts of data that can be gathered from the crash to try and extrapolate what happened, but still, it's largely a mystery at this point why any of that happened the way it happened. And a lot of it doesn't really make a lot of sense like that, and so it does appear to be fairly mysterious. But with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can, and I thank you once again for the support, Gunfox61, over multiple super chats, helping this channel to keep on running and helping us to keep eating, which is a very important physical process to conduct, the process of eating. And also, I got to say once again that I thank you for the days in history, because the days in history are incredibly interesting, always. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that $20 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And he said, great stream, guys. And do you think that the B-2s are going to not just bomb Iran, but test their air defense as well? And do you know what kind of air defense they have? And Poland would level what's left of the Russian army, and do you agree?
I would agree. The Polish would have easy work of the Russians at this point. Of course, at the beginning, things would have to be stable. Well, front lines that would have to be stabilized. But beyond that, the Polish would make pretty good work of the Russians. As far as Iran goes, testing the air defense with a stealth aircraft is really pointless because Iran doesn't have incredibly advanced air defense systems. The most advanced air defense system that they have is a minimal count of S-400 surface-to-air missile defense systems inside of the country. But beyond that, they don't have anything more advanced than an S-400. So using a B-2 to test air defense is pretty much pointless because no radar will ever pick up the B-2 unless if its bomb bay door is open and the radar is aimed right at the B-2 already. They won't be able to pick them up. So it would be pretty hard. It would be impossible to test air defense abilities because, once again, they wouldn't even be able to see the B-2 on radar to lock onto it and fire it and then see what their capabilities are. You would largely have to test that with non-stealth aircraft that would be conducting largely wild weasel or seed operations. Seed operations is what they're usually called nowadays, which are anti-radiation missions, meaning that they target the radiation emissions of enemy radar systems. And largely, you would see that those aircraft would try and be non-stealth, so that way the radars would lock on to them, or the radars would be active. They would be able to triangulate the source of those radars, lock on an AGM-88 harm, and then fire the harm at the radar. The radar then has the choice to keep the radar on and try and shoot down that aircraft that fired the harm, or turn off the radar and hope that the missile doesn't hit directly where that radar source was. That's really how those missions would operate, but the B-2 really can't conduct those because, once again, there really is no way for them to actually at least alert the air defense systems enough to try and lock on and fire at them to figure out what their air defense capabilities really look like. So as far as the B-2s are concerned, once again, it's a fairly straightforward kind of a weapon system. The B-2's job is to fly into Iran undetected, loiter over sensitive targets, and then when they're given the order, start dropping those bombs dead on the nail. Or largely wait for a specific time, considering that they won't be communicating with anyone. Communications would largely give away their position, but they would sit there and hover over their target or loiter over it, and then at a specific time, they all start dropping their bombs onto their targets, and then they conduct pretty much a shock and awe air campaign on the Iranians as every other air asset starts moving into the area and starts clearing out their own targets as well. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Enforcer Matt's going crazy there. He is spamming LSA like no other. What's going on here, Matty? What's going on?
I'm just trying to get a little roll going on here. I noticed the chat where it was like 10. I was trying to get it up to like 50 or something.
Oh, well, that's an amicable goal right there. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again for support, and I hope that does address that question the best I can.
Yes, indeed. And moving on to our next one here, this one goes to none other than Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper, for that support once again, and we do appreciate it very much. And he said, if you didn't get it, then might be some words that YouTube doesn't like. So just take this with the coffee fund for the enforcer and question to the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I don't think YouTube liked your first one because I don't think we ever saw it come through. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for the coffee fund. We really do need the coffee. The coffee is good. It helps us to be able to stay awake and keep this thing running all the way through, pretty much to midnight most nights. But I do thank you so much once again for support. And we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Dave, who says, I believe the Russians are responsible for that incident inside of Lithuania, and if so, what should the USA do?
Well, if they were responsible, that would be a pretty open provocation. They violated the sovereignty of Lithuania to conduct that, pretty much that kidnapping at that point. And then on top of that, they conducted an action against U.S. Federal personnel or DoD personnel. So at that point, I believe that will pretty much be an act of war, we will largely have to assume, because they violated the sovereignty of Lithuania. And not only that, they pretty much attacked U.S. forces at that point. So I'd assume that that probably would lead to a major armed standoff demanding the release of those prisoners and probably a great deal of concessions by the Russians if they are alive. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And thank you once again for sponsoring our live chat. And holy moly!
Holy moly! Do you see that? Do you see that massive support just come in?
Man, I might be blind, but I'm seeing something red in the live chat. Holy moly, like, get to it, man. Get to it. What do we got? What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our next one, and once again, big shout out to Zyber Sniper 1 for that support. And we are now jumping into our next one, which goes to John Peterson. This is his first ever super chat, by the way. He threw in a massive $300 donation. And huge shout out, John, for deciding to support the channel and basically trying to buy stock in it at this point. I tell you what, that's a huge amount of support, and we do appreciate that. And also, I'm not sure how long you've been around the channel, but thank you very much for the support, and we do appreciate that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you for the unbelievably massive support, John Peterson. A $300 super chat. Holy moly, that's a huge one, and it's your first super chat ever, John Peterson. And I gotta thank you massively once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air right now. I don't know what you're thinking. It could be something nice. You could have thrown in $300 to cuss us out, although that's probably highly unlikely. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for that support. We are massively appreciative and grateful for it, and you're helping us to be able to keep this thing on air every day, 24/7. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address it the best I can to your first super chat ever. Probably one of the biggest ones we've seen in a long time. And of course, a massive thanks to you so much for that. And so with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. But holy moly, holy smokes, that was a huge one. And a big thanks to you once again.
Yes, big thanks once again for that massive support, by the way. And with that, we're now moving on to our next super chat. And this one goes to Jay Fitzarelli, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jay, for that support. We do appreciate that very much once again. They said the intro is ravishing, per Mrs. Howell and I.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying that intro. That thing was custom made. I'm sure you know that. But I'm always proud to say it was custom made because that took a lot of work by an amazing composer, Marcos Barilari, who I had the great pleasure of working with, who is a composer not only for The Enforcer and the Lee Spring Army, but also for the amazing Disney. He actually composes works for Disney Pixar. Isn't that cool? But we also have to give a huge shout out to Budapest Scoring, which is an incredibly cool orchestra in Budapest. And you know something that's cool, Matthew? Something that that I was told by a friend of the channel. And not only that, I looked into it and I found out that it was true. Do you know something very cool about Budapest Scoring?
What is it?
They actually did parts of the soundtrack for the hit TV series Squid Game.
Oh, really? Like, for real?
Yeah, they actually did.
Like the whole...
I'm not sure if they did that one. I think they did the one that goes... You know, the one where the guy was like dancing around. I think they did that one. Let me go check exactly what they did because it's on their website. Let's see here. Let me go look. Let's see here. Let's see here. So if you want to know some of the stuff they've worked on, I can name some of it. They did the soundtrack for the movie Get Out, which seems to be a pretty popular horror movie. I've never seen it. They also did the soundtrack for the movie Left Behind. I know Matthew's seen that one. Let's see. They also did... let's see here. What are the other... I'm trying to go through some of... They also did the Netflix series Medal of Honor, if y'all seen that one. They did... I'm trying to see some of the ones that I probably know. Let's see. They did Diablo. Y'all might know Diablo. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm trying to find all of the ones that would be big. Let's see here. Dang, man. It's, like, they've done so many of them. I'm trying to scroll through the whole freaking thing and find them. Dang, man. It's such a freaking long list. I'm trying so quickly to find them.
Are you sure they didn't do the... Are you sure they didn't do that one?
Hold up, I gotta see. I gotta find out. Let's see. Hold up, let me see here. So, oh man, I wish I could play it on air. It's copyrighted, of course, by Netflix at this point. It was a work made for hire by them.
I did it
so
for
wait a minute.
Rambo.
So wait a minute. Hold up. Actually, they did the entire soundtrack for Squid Game. So yes, they did do the.
Oh,
Yeah. So
they did do it after all.
they actually
I'll
did
tell
it.
you
Yeah.
what.
So
That's nice.
So yeah, that's actually pretty cool. The same orchestra that did the tracks for Squid Game season 1 and 2 and 3 is also the same orchestra that did our intro. So that's actually really cool to think about. And also someone said play it. No, I don't know.
They did the music for Rambo, it looks like, as well, A Christmas Carol, Lionheart, obviously Squid Game, for that movie called Parasite. I know a parasite in real life, by the way. He happens to run a channel and goes, "Oh man!" But they did a lot, actually. Like they've actually got a whole repertoire.
They got a massive repertoire. They're a great orchestra, by the way. They do incredible work. Of course, their work speaks for themselves. I mean, the Squid Game soundtrack is a banger. Like, you know, it's incredibly good. It's very memorable. Like they do great. They do great. They do great work. And we had them do our intro, which is actually pretty sick now that you think about that, Matthew. It's like we had the same orchestra who did the Squid Game track do our intro. And then not only that, we also had a composer from Disney Pixar compose it. So it was actually a pretty cool little intro there. And I just love to know that people really do appreciate that, because I put a lot of work of my own time into that to get that off the ground. And also that cost a great deal of money to get off the ground too. But beyond that, I'm glad.
What about me? I put a lot of thought into thinking about it.
Well, you know, yeah,
I'm joking. I'm joking. That was entirely Enforcer's project, by the way, on the music, by the way. That was his baby project, and it came along very, very well, by the way.
Yeah, it turned out pretty good. I was pretty proud of it. It's my dream project, really, because I always wanted to make some patriotic music that was absolutely bussin', and I feel like we did the best. I think I'm of course I'm biased. You know, I paid for it, and also I worked on it, so very biased in saying this. But I think that we have the best sounding Star Spangled Banner that's ever been composed in the modern day. I think that we have the best sounding Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean that's ever been made. I think that we have the best Armed Forces medley that's ever been made. And I also think that the Anthem of the Lee Spring Army, which of course is the only one that's ever been made, so it is the best and the worst, is the best that it could ever be. I mean, the sound of the Anthem of the LSA, just as an instrumental, is sick. Like that, it sounds incredibly good. So I got to thank you so much for really enjoying that. And also, once again, voice crack right there. Also, once again, just to redo it, just to make sure that we really emphasize that there. Once again, another cool thing about the intro is that thanks to Marcos, who spent his time for free doing this, he actually put together all of the video track showing the orchestra playing the Anthem of the LSA and the Star Spangled Banner. He actually did all of that just because he wanted to. That was incredibly nice of him. I got to give him a huge thanks for that on air and a huge credit for that, because it's great to show y'all the actual orchestra playing the tracks on air, you know, like in the intro every single night, so that we can actually see the orchestra. Soon, a lot of that will be overlaid. It's just sadly I haven't had time to get around to it yet. Soon, most of that will be overlaid with patriotic footage of its own for the Lee Spring Army and the Star Spangled Banner, but still incredibly cool. And I got to thank you so much once again for really enjoying it and really appreciating the work and effort that went into it, because it's so much better to hear people say, wow, I love the intro and the music, than going through all that work and effort for someone to go, boring, too long. You know, it's like, well, like someone did that tonight and I just replied to him in the countdown, boo-hoo, and that was it. I mean, it's just like, you know, we put so much work into it. It's not like we're getting rid of it anytime soon. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and all the kind words. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to SC Dear Girl, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, SC Dear Girl, as well, for that support. They said LSA, USA, Air Force, CCATTAE.
And thank you so much for the support. And help this channel to keep on running. And long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the U.S. Air Force, a great branch of the armed forces, flying high into the sky. And that's one of the lines, one of the lyrics in The Wild Blue Yonder, which is the song of the Air Force. But anyways, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $10 super chat from Cameron, who puts in a 10 as well. And thank you very much, Cameron, also for helping to keep the channel running. He said, you guys think Ukraine's starting to gain the upper hand in the front line near Toretsk?
I would say yes. They wiped out the entire Russian southern flank in one day for the large part, and they're still pushing. So I would say yes, they have certainly gained the initiative on the Battle of Toretsk, and it, without a doubt at this point, has put the Russians on the defensive, trying to hold the battlefield instead of putting the Ukrainians on the defensive. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I think it wants to give support and help this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. Once again, they said, let's see. Oh, come on, man. I can't read this one. This one right here is too much. It's too much. It's political. And it's graphics, too. I can't even read it. I sadly can't even read it. But thank you very much for the support. And we do appreciate that. But Enforcer, what say you?
Come on, Jack. We can't read that. Didn't you see the sign? It's a hump yard, Jack. It's a freaking hump yard. Like, dude, man, honestly, man, that was a masterpiece of that sign showed up in that picture that I took of that train today. Because we made fun of that the first time we went out there, by the way, y'all, because, y'all know that before Trump became president, we started doing his voice on air a good bit because he's now the president. We did a lot of Biden because he was the president. So we would always go, oh, look, Jack, come on, Jack. We were making fun of that 24/7. And crazily enough, there's a sign out in front of the Irondale Rail Yard that says, it's a hump yard, Jack. And I don't know if that's supposed to be making fun of him or if it's just some inside joke that has nothing to do with him. But when we saw it, we went, oh, look, Jack, it's a hump yard. I went to the hills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping. And we were busting out laughing at that the first time we saw it. Pretty funny. But anyways, with that, I do thank you. I do thank you for the support, Jack. I went to the supermarket and I saw a UFO and I climbed onto the spaceship and I went flying around the sun and I have legs that turn blonde in the sun and
I love unions, Jack. I love unions. I don't want to bust up unions. I love unions. Unions are, union.
And look, and on top of that, look, you think I hate Amtrak? I freaking love Amtrak. I'd ride Amtrak from Dover to Washington every day. You got nothing on me, kid. You don't know shit about trains. I'm gonna sit there. I'm gonna do nothing for Amtrak when I become president. I'm gonna tell you that. I'm gonna sit on my ass and do nothing. And it's gonna be great, Jack. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful.
I stopped by to visit the train yard. I said, what is this? A train track? And they said, it's a hump yard, Jack.
And they told me it was a hump yard, Jack, and they said, give me a vanilla ice cream on the stat. Like but anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And like Adam McLean said, legalize comedy, legalize comedy.
Oh, they said it.
Yeah. But anyways, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And also another funny thing. Another funny thing, by the way, is that, one thing that's interesting, Matt, one thing that's really interesting to me, all right, is that, now I just want to say this, I'm not being political here because I'm gonna hit both sides here. Why in the hell did both Biden and Trump promise high-speed trains, and then none of them ever worked on actually making that happen? You remember that, Matthew? You remember that in the 2020 election? Both of them were swearing up and down that if they got elected, high-speed rail was going to become a thing across America. We weren't going to be a third world country anymore, and we were going to have trains like China. And then no one, and Trump sure as hell isn't working on that now, and Biden never did either. So it's where the hell did that promise go? That was just a promise made in the thin air for no reason.
I'll be honest with you. I don't remember that promise at all. It may have been made, but I just got distracted by all the other big ones.
Dude, well, I remember this specifically. America is going to be a first world country, and soon America is going to have high-speed rail. And then the crowd went wild, legitimately went wild at that rally. I remember seeing that rally back 5 years ago, and I was like, oh really? I was like, no way. And then Biden at the same time, he's like, oh look, Jack, we're gonna give high-speed rail. And I was like, no way. I was like, the future is bright. I was like as far as railroads went, I was like, the future's bright. No matter who's getting elected, that seems to be a surefire thing that's happening right now. And then nothing happened with it. And now nothing's clearly happening with it, because now they're talking about possibly cutting the funding for Amtrak. So it's like, what was the point of saying that? From both of them. It's that was just a straight up lie. And also, James Hughes said, well, Biden did put money into Amtrak. Not enough. The amount of money that Amtrak needs, it's actually a fairly significant amount. It would be an upfront investment of probably about $200 billion to get high-speed rail throughout the country, which sounds like a lot, but considering that it's an upfront investment that you never have to make again, it really isn't that much to actually have a full high-speed rail network across the East and West Coast. But no one will give them that money. Yeah, Biden gave them, I think, an additional $30 or $40 billion, but with that, all Amtrak Amtrak could do was modernize their fleet in the Northeast Corridor and nowhere else. And that really shows. Like, you can go out to, say, the Amtrak Cascades up in the Northwest. It's still fairly old. You can go and ride any of the legacy services, the long-distance ones. They're all still old. The only rolling stock that's new is up in the Northeast Corridor. And then the one that's just, it drives me crazy is the Alstom Liberty, which these were sent faulty. These had major flaws in them. Alstom made them fairly decently good looking, like they're very good looking high-speed trains, but then they were riddled with flaws. And so now for years they've been sitting in a siding pretty much, as they've been sending one unit back at a time for Alstom to try and figure out what the hell they did wrong and fix them. And now they're finally possibly going to get into service here soon, when they were supposed to be in service years ago. So then Amtrak got mired up with all of that, and these Alstom Liberties didn't cost cheap. They were incredibly expensive units a piece. So that's something that's, that was annoying to me, because it's like, it's like, sure, Biden put money into it. Like, I got to give credit to where credit's due on that. Yeah, he did give money to it. But no one's giving them enough to actually do anything, really. Like, it's just enough to, like, do little sporadic things, but never enough to actually improve the entire rail system to where it's usable again like it used to be. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. But I'd have to say, much like Big House Dog Trucker said, make Amtrak great again. We are going to be making American rail service great again. No longer will you have to sit in a car in the middle of Atlanta on the interstate and have some homeless junkie harassing you for cash. You can now be sitting on a train and have it happen while you're sitting in a chair. Like, it will happen there instead. It's much better, much faster. People will be saying, I have to take the train. It's a great train, the best train, a wonderful train. Nobody's had trains like we've had trains. We are going to beat the Chinese. The Chinese thought that they had that tofu drag high-speed rail. We are going to have that real American steel high-speed rail everywhere in the country that you want to go. Very quick and easy. You fly from one side of the country to the other. Bing, bing, bong, bong. Get on the train and then get to your final destination. Very quick, very easy. It's going to be great. It's going to be huge. Believe me. People are going to be saying, wow, U.S. transportation, it's bigly, real bigly, and it's going to be great. It's going to be bigly. We're not going to be stalling on this like Putin. We call him Putin is going to be stalling on the peace negotiations in Ukraine. We're not going to be stalling on it like that. It's going to be fast. It's going to be quick. Train goes from one place to the other, point A to point B, faster than you can say Rosie O'Donnell and her fat ass. Her fat ass would slow down the trains pretty quickly. You'd sit there and go, wow, that thing is not moving. That's because the whole train's sagging in the middle because of Rosie O'Donnell. But anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one. I think I've gotten too deep into this. But Matthew, what do we got for the next one? What do we got?
All right, and our next one here goes to Ivy Picon, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ivy, for that support, and we do appreciate that very much. And he says, Poland has always been one of the strongest militaries in Europe. They were suckered in World War II, and then a lie was spread about their abilities.
And I got to say, I thank you for the support, and I'd agree. The Polish have been a very strong military whenever the Polish state has existed historically, which hasn't been all the time. Sometimes there's just periods in history where Poland didn't exist. But they have always been a fairly strong country militarily when they were around. And I would say in their modern form, they're probably the strongest they've ever been, actually, while a lot of people like to dog on them. Poland is an incredibly strong and effective country militarily compared to their peers in Europe and even the Russian Federation. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the B-Man, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, B-Man, for the support. And we appreciate that very much. And they said that this obsessions with the Greenland. Is Iceland next? Canada? Panama? It's confusing.
I gotta tell you, my obsession with Greenland simply focuses around I like money, and Greenland's green, and money is green, and I like green. We're going to go up to Greenland, we're going to go up there, and we're going to find the green. I don't know where it is. I've looked at Google Maps, and I've seen that the entire continent is ice. It's white. And I go, that is not green. That is white snow. And that is not money. Not good. There's a little bit of green over here, but it's not really green. It's more so lime green, which really isn't money either. We need real green. We need to make Greenland green again. We are going to increase global warming. We were going to get rid of all of the glaciers. It will really be green. And then we will finally take Greenland. It's going to be a great thing. Believe me. People are going to be going, wow, Greenland's never been better. It's been the greatest Greenland that we've ever seen. And I'm going to say it is going to be very green. Very green. It's going to be the greenest green that you've ever seen. And we're going to send Waltzing Waltz up there. Waltzing Waltz. We're going to send him up there to talk to Denmark. He's going to put them into our secret group chat. And he's going to tell them all of the war plans. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. All the war plans. No holds barred. We're going to also go and get the guy who created the platform that we use, because we can. But beyond that, I'd have to say that the obsession with Greenland has to do with Arctic security. The Russians, the Chinese, they're up there in the Arctic. They're scooting around, and Little Rocket Man, he's not really there, but I wanted to say that. That was kind of funny. But Little Rocket Man, he's not there, but Russia and China are, and Xi Jinping and China, they're up there, and they're trying to take control of the Arctic because they know it's a big thing. Nuclear missiles, they fly over the Arctic. They don't fly over the South Pole. Nobody likes the South Pole. Nobody remembers second. They like number one, first place, the North Pole. Everyone likes it. It's got that little red and white striped pole right at the top. It's a very cool pole. I like to look at it. It looks like that barbershop pole that they used to have in front of the barbershops. And they also used to have the cigar store Indian sitting on the street. They got rid of that. Under Biden, they got rid of the cigar store Indian. We're going to be bringing it back. It's going to be back on the streets. But beyond that, that is the reason why the Arctic is very important. Nuclear missiles fly over it. So whoever controls it gets to see the nuclear missiles as they fly towards the other people. So for that reason, that's why we want Greenland. But the honest truth is that we don't really have to take Greenland. We're already there. We already have bases in Greenland at Patufic, which used to be called Thule. I don't know why it was called Thule. I don't know why it's called Patufic, but it used to be there. Well, it still is there. And we get to look over the horizon and wait for nuclear missiles to come right over from the North Pole. So I don't really know why we need Greenland, because if a war started, we could just send troops up there to protect it, and Denmark could still have it. And we don't have to invade it. And we also don't have to create a major diplomatic scandal. We don't have to create a scandal as big as Hunter and his cocaine. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. All jokes aside, it really is because the Russians and the Chinese are getting into the Arctic, and they're trying to largely take control of it away from the United States of America. So that way, in the future, they will be able to start to exert a large amount of control. And if a conventional war was to break out, they could largely destroy the U.S. facilities at Patufic and leave us blind, looking northbound to where any nuclear missiles would be fired from. That's largely the main reason why, to explain it out of the voice. So that way, if some people weren't understanding what I was saying, it was a little bit more understandable. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Big Daddy J, also known as DC Audio FTW, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Big Daddy J, for that support, and we do appreciate it very much. And he said, Enforcer Matt, when do I get upgraded to channel legend status, LOL? I've been here a long time. I watch complete vids. I only hit the like button, and I donate when I can. And LSA.
And Big Daddy J, he wants to be a legend. He wants to be a legend like me. I'm a legend, a great legend, one of the best. Matthew, am I not a legend?
Oh, look, he's a legend, Jack. He's a legend, you know.
That's enough. See, he's called me a legend.
Hey, man, shut up, man.
Now listen, we're going to get into a yelling match in the middle of this debate. We're going to start hollering at each other. I don't even know if he knows where he is. I don't think he does. Where are you? Where are you?
Oh, come on, man. Come on. I mean, I've been doing, going around the, anyway.
Someone give him a vanilla ice cream and take a nap. Beyond that, Big Daddy J, you are a channel legend. Considering your protest and considering that I like you and you're really cool, you are now a channel legend. You are 100% a channel legend, one of the greatest, one of the best. We're bumping you straight up to the top. You're going to be better than Waltzing Waltz and Little Rubio, little itty bitty Rubio. He's a little guy, little tiny guy. We call him a figurine up in the Oval Office. We put him up on the desk.
Hey, wait a minute. Did you say I lost? Did I lose?
I don't know. I mean, like, technically you dropped out. It's just like, I don't really know how to
Okay,
work
well,
with
look,
it.
Jack, here's what we'll say since we lost. We're going to have to speak a lot more clearly now. We're going to have to lose all that stuttering.
Dude, honestly, yo, that was actually pretty funny because like it was like, oh, look, I don't know what's going on. The election ended, and then he was like, look, the elections are what they are. I'm leaving. Okay, screw all of you people. I don't want to talk to you. Like he just went
clarity.
Yeah,
all
he
of a
just
sudden. It was like it's perfect clarity.
Yeah, it was just perfect clarity, man. Like it was like, whatever. Look, I'm going. I'm leaving. I was like, okay. I was like, honestly,
look,
man.
he can speak. It's like he can actually speak. It's like I'm shocked.
That's it. I was like, honestly, man, that was the funniest thing ever, man. That was like something from the movie Airplane, you know, like where they're flying on instruments and they go to the cockpit and they're playing jazz like on a saxophone or something. Like it was like that, man. It was like, look, you know, blah, blah, blah. Look, okay, look, it's over, all right. I clocked out. I don't have to come in anymore. I was like, honestly, I respect that. Like you kept that up for like years. But anyways, moving on from that, you are a legend now, Big Daddy J. In short, and I got to thank you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And thank you for always being here and liking the streams and also supporting when you can, because we really do appreciate that. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we also, Anatola said, I want a president that never talks ever. Oh, buddy, you're asking too much of politicians. Like, they're always going to be.
I'll tell you what, they get no respect around here. They said I want a president that doesn't talk at all, but they have to be a great communicator. But they can't talk. It's the rules. Oh man, I'm telling you, yeah, they get no respect around here. They get no respect.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I get no respect around here. I tried to get into politics. Oh, man. And a news journalist, he told me, oh, man, you know, you could be a great communicator. I said, oh, yeah, how? He said, if you stop talking. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh, man, when I was growing up, my parents didn't like me either. Oh, man, when I bathed in the bathtub, they give me a radio and a toaster as my toys. Oh, man, I'm telling you. And my daughter, she doesn't give me any respect either. Oh, man, I'm telling you. She gives me no respect. No respect, I tell you. Oh, man, she gave me a t-shirt for Christmas. And had a giant target on the back of it. Oh, man. And then my son got a BB gun for Christmas. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, my back is killing me. Oh, man, you know, my back is killing me. You know, I had to go talk to? Oh, man. I had to go talk to Dr. Vinny Bombach. Oh, man, I'm telling you. And you know, he told me, do some aerobics. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Sit-ups and stuff. Oh, man, look at me. I'm a fat guy, real fat. Oh, man, but not as fat as my ex. Oh, man, she was a real fat one. Oh, man, a real fat one. I told her she was fat. She said, why don't you talk to the back of me? I said, oh, man, I would if I had a tank of gas. Oh, man, I'm telling you.
You know, my ex account's gotten real fat. 23,000 followers. That's pretty damn good.
Man, honestly, it is an impressive Twitter account. Well, you know, the enforcer is pretty big these days. Pretty big.
Oh, man, real big. Oh, man, getting fat. Oh, man, and my wife likes to tell me about that. Oh, man, she told me to leave the house all the time to go to the gym. Oh, man, every time I come back, there's some guy in the closet. She tells me that he's cleaning the place. Oh, man, I don't get it. I get no respect around here.
But anyways, with that, let's see. Sam Kinison, I cannot do Sam Kinison. Like, I can do the, you live in a freaking desert, but I can't do anything beyond that. So, sadly, I can't do his full range. I would love to, though. And also, Christopher Walken, I don't think I can do him. Like, honestly, I haven't heard his voice, so I have to look into it. Maybe I can. But still.
I don't know who you are, but I shall find you. Is that him?
No, I think that's something Nielsen.
That's Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was trying to see if you called it.
Well, I mixed up his first and last name there. But anyways.
That's Neeson Liam.
Bro, that's Neeson Liam. Bro, that's like Dodney Rangerfield or something like that. But anyways,
yeah, I'll tell you what.
With that, I hope that does address that well. And Christmas Tavares said, Mike Tyson, please. And I would do Mike Tyson. But you're just a rat piece of shit. But anyways, I'm just playing with you, Christmas Tavares. I hope you enjoyed it, though. We haven't done that one in years, it feels. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I hope y'all got a laugh out of that. But with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
You know, the one thing I gotta say is genitals is getting the puss. They're getting a nice puss. But they gotta remember, you can't just have a puss with nothing in it. You gotta go get a tiger. Go put a tiger in the front seat and take it around the track with you. That'll solve it.
Listen,
But anyways.
Listen, did I sit there and talk to you? Are you talking out of turn? Well, you need to stop talking unless you want to, you know. What do you mean by that, Mike? Listen, like, you don't want to know. Like, I just got out of prison. But anyways.
Listen, I don't usually talk to reporters unless I fornicate with them.
Oh my God, you said it like, oh, yeah. Oh, man.
Bro, I'm like, listen, that was the crazy stuff. Like, honestly, distasteful. But the balls it took to say something like that out loud in front of all those people, that was a little bit crazy.
Listen, I'm not your average politician. I only I only speak the truth. Like, I only talk to reporters well, I talk to reporters whether I do or don't, but in the end I will. Like, it will happen, and it will happen with tallow. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And also, by the way, man, can you hit the RFK really quickly before we move on to the next one?
I was looking in the chat. I saw Pelly Smith say, "Why did I get placed on a timeout for saying I got hairy legs?" Reference LMAO. No. I was thinking about it yesterday when I hit that moose. And I said, well, why did Pele get put on timeout? And I was like, that jerky yesterday was really good from that roadkill.
But anyways, I would say, no, I'm seriously speaking, Pelly Smith, you were placed on timeout. That was a Nightbot that did that. I'm not sure why it did it, but it just did. So I'm sorry. But
yeah, we're sorry about that. Sometimes Nightbot just does friendly fire for no reason on people. Sadly, we really don't have that much control over it. I do apologize for that, though. But with that, it's like someone said this is so effed. I hope it's not. You could be a couch and you could be near the vice president. That would be worse. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
I can say that now that I'm in charge of the Department of Health, don't take to the couches.
But anyways, going to our next one here. This one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jack Ray, for that $10 support. They said, all these years, I thought your stammering, whoa, Jag impersonation was Jimmy Stewart. I couldn't figure out why, Stewart, and I guess I see why I couldn't figure it.
Well, I thank you for the support. Yeah, the whole time that was supposed to be the current sitting president of the United States, which was Biden. The president, whoever is in, they're doing things. Like now I sound like someone else. They were doing things, but they're doing things. They're actually the president of the United States. So they become a decent target for comedy because they're always doing something that you can make fun of. So for the past 3 years, we've been making fun of Biden quite clearly on air, doing his voice, and people have just been misunderstanding it to be Jimmy Stewart. Like, that's been very common. Now we do Trump, and, it's like, I guess there's no one else that talks like him. So everyone finally, has the joke land. So I guess people weren't getting that outraged that we were making fun of Biden because they didn't even know we were making fun of him for 3 years. But now we're making fun of Trump, and then people get outraged. But it is what it is. We make sure to hold no bars, like on the joking side of things. It's fair. Like, we don't, sit there and attack only one side with our jokes. Like, if you want to call it an attack, we do all sides. So I hope that does address that well, and I think it wants to give her support. And yes, that was supposed to be the president of the United States at the time he was the president. But with that, we are on to also another thing that I have to say that's funny is that some people were noticing leading up to the election last year that it started to do the current voice of this guy a lot more. And I explained it to everyone back then. I said, look, someone's going to win. If it's Kamala, then I got to figure out how to do her voice, and I don't know if I can. But if it's Trump, I already know how to do his, so I just got to brush up on it. And that's why I was doing it more on air. So then he won, and that was pretty much the lead up to it. We were already going to start getting rolling into the comedy as soon as he came into office. And I got to tell you, there's no subject matter to be missed there. There's plenty of comedy, plenty of content. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Lewiston Maniac, who puts in an $8 donation, and thank you very much, Lewiston, for that support as well, and we do appreciate that very much and help to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is greatly appreciated, and folks like you helps this channel to keep on running and make this thing possible. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 7. And thank you, Jack, as well, for that support. We do appreciate that. He said, I guess you could say this is a B2 movement.
Well, I suppose so. There are many jokes to be made. I will hold off on them because of the sensitive nature of that topic. We don't want to have the cancel culture come for us. They already come for us every day. On both sides, crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy, Some people try and make the cancel culture sound political. They try and make it sound like it comes from one side. But I can tell you this, sitting on the fence like we do, I can tell you that both sides have their own version of the cancel culture, and both of them are as violent as the other. So we want to make sure to avoid at least the one cancel culture that will come after us on that one. But that is a pretty funny one, I will admit. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because Matthew, we're going to be exposing the... But anyways, moving on, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Plazat, who puts in a 6. And thank you, Plazat, as well for that support. And he said coffee.
Hey, and thank you for the support, Plazat, channel legend, for the coffee fund and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Born in Ukraine, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much as well, Born in Ukraine, for that support. They said 3-year LSA edition or $2 million raised for Ukraine via fundraisers, hoodie or merch. LSA.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I believe that the merch questions go straight to Enforcer Matt. And Enforcer Matt, what do you have to say about that?
Right now, the merch is kind of iffy, I'll be honest with you, because we're so bogged down with doing the short war videos daily once again, and also doing the streams at night, and also doing the Patreon and the Twitter. The merch is a little bit iffy right now. I'll be honest with y'all. I do enjoy doing the merch runs because they were fun last year when we did them, and of course, everybody likes to get the merch. But it does eat into our ability to, like, for example, make the videos on a daily basis and things like that, because it takes so much time to actually prepare that. That this year, if we do it, it's probably gonna be one run, and that might just be it this year. So it's not even in the works just yet. We haven't really started working on that, so we'll have to see. If it gets to be maybe a low period on the channel or something, we might do that if we have the time for it. But for right now, it is on a hold temporarily. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the same thing. Matthew is pretty much our merchandising representative here, so whatever he says goes on that topic. But before we move on to the next man, I saw someone in the live chat, AS, they said, this guy almost sounds American, but I can't tell. I say, we are as American as it gets. We are from the great state of Alabama, born and raised here on the Alabama soil. We have lived here our entire lives, and soon may depart from the state indefinitely, perhaps. Nevertheless, I do have to say that we are as American as it gets, AS. We are quite American, of the soil, from the soil, and will die on the soil one day, I hope. But we are very American. We are as American as it gets. Look at our intro. Look at our intro. It is as American as it gets. And you know another thing? If I wasn't American, could I do a great Richard Nixon? I couldn't. And that's why I have to tell you that, as President of the United States, if you elect me, I'm going to wiretap Watergate a second time. It's going to be even better. Like, it's going to be great. We're going to go right up to Washington. I'm going to say, I'm going to have the plumbers go straight from the White House to Watergate, literally right down the street. We're going to make it a very quick commute. And they are going to go down there and they are going to wiretap the hell out of them. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. In case you're wondering, are we American? Are we not? We are as American as we can be. U.S. citizens, naturally born, of this land, right-wise. And so with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to First Waffen, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Waffen, for that support. They said, First Waffen, and howdy, all my friends.
Hey! And howdy to all the Americans out there. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because it's folks like you out to make this thing possible. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ray, who puts in a 7. And thank you, Jack, for the second support of the night. And we do appreciate it. He said the Enforcers are all American. All American.
We are all American. We are as American as American cheese. We are American as hot dogs, hamburgers, all kinds of amazing things that this United States of America has made. We are as American as airplanes. We are as American as mass manufactured automobiles. We are as American as railroading. We are as American as... What else is American, Matthew? What else is American?
Hamburger.
We already listed that one.
That's German.
Not really. But what else is
a hamburger? Is it's Hamburg, Germany.
But it was popularized here.
But it was created in Hamburg.
Matthew, who gets credit for the automobile? America or Germany? We get the credit because we mass produced it.
Actually, Mercedes-Benz gets credit for that, which was German.
Man, think about that, man. They made the first car, and now all of a sudden these days. They're mostly the first car people buy off the used lots. It's a crazy thing how that works. But still, I have to say, in my honest opinion,
that you know, it's very, we're very American. I mean, that's maybe the best I could say, and that's in my opinion. That's not a fact. You know, you might check our passports and find something different. He's a spy. I'm just kidding, but you know, we're Americans. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, I see someone say that they voted for Nixon twice. Well, I thank you for your vote. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to DJ Magic Stick, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much for that support once again. And they said that Belarus troops have been caught crossing in that area of the border and other areas of the border.
I personally haven't heard about those crossings. Those would certainly make the news here if we saw them. So if you have any proof of that, please send it forward to us because we would like to read about it and make sure that that's a verified incident. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bad, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Bad, for that support. They said Russia needs Georgia to be an autocracy for a complete AA cover of landmass for the Caspian Sea. And this allots a logistical supremacy for contraband.
They need Alcoholics Anonymous supremacy? Is that what I heard? AA supremacy? Did I hear that, Matthew?
Our artillery covers.
Oh, artillery covers. Well, I mean, I guess with the anti-ship missile batteries, I suppose. But, you know, they can still largely do that with the coastline that they have right now, including the one in Crimea. I mean, they have the most coastline in the Black Sea right now by far. The only country that beats them is Turkey. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Very interesting concept, though. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bad, who puts in a 5 once more and says Azerbaijan and Armenia have been in conflict since '88, and Russia is a small place with their own UN peacekeeping forces.
They haven't been at war with each other since '88 because they hadn't actually left the Soviet Union yet. They've been at war with each other since '94. That would be the first Nagorno-Karabakh war. So that technically is the time when they actually went to war. So I do thank you for the support, but that is true. That's largely the situation in between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it's always a bit of a testy one because of the whole Nagorno-Karabakh thing. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for support and helping to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to DJ once again, who puts in another 5. And thank you, DJ, once more for that support. They said, they'll see here. They said the U.S. will keep appeasing Russia, and he will not change his support for Russia, and the U.S. will blame Ukraine. Mark my words.
I don't know. Maybe you might be right. You know, I'm not ruling anything out anymore on this kind of stuff because we've been proven wrong a million times. We always like to see the silver lining and like to hope that it will go the sensible way. So you might be right because that would be the nonsensible way. So might have a chance of being correct. But I hope that they would actually see that the Russians are the ones to blame for this one, without a doubt. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Robert Trejo, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Robert, for the support as well. He said Poland wants a fight, but Russia only attacked the weak, so they're playing weak.
The Polish. They've always been known for their bar fighting. There is a Russian province inspired by that same Polish excellence, and that is Kaliningrad.
But beyond that, I'd have to say that is a fairly interesting concept. Maybe that's the case. So that's all I have to say on that interesting idea. Not sure if that would be the case, but that's still interesting. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 5, and thank you, Wyatt, as well, for that support. He said, hi, Enforcers. You two have been doing excellent work, and mainstream media. And have you heard of the train, the 7 Stars, in Kyushu, Japan? It looks like a cool trip, and LSA.
I have heard of that train. I've heard of some Japanese trains. Let me go show this train to Matthew. Matthew loves trains. He really does love them. He loves them greatly. He loves them bigly. Here's the train, Matthew. It's the 7 Stars in Kyushu. There it is. Look at it.
That's a very gold train.
It is very golden, very nice. This is what the inside looks like. Well, take a look. Look at that. Isn't that nice?
No, that is nice right there. I do like the interior.
Here's all of their cars from beginning to end. Here's one of them. Here's the other. Here's another one. You can see that they have around the Kyushu. This thing goes around Kyushu Island. Really cool. Really neat. And here's the back car. They've got the executive viewing point out of the back. Very nice. Really like it. But man, have you seen the interiors? I got to see if I can show you this. Let's see here. Yeah, let me go show you the interior pictures because it is nice. There's one of the interiors of the observation car. Here's one of the rooms. Here is the rear viewing area.
Oh man.
Here is the bar.
Oh man. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh man. Here's the bar from another angle. It's a very impressive
Oh
train.
man, I like the bar from this angle. Do they have a bowl of snow?
If you ask politely, they might. I'm just kidding, by the way. They wouldn't. It's Japan. You go to prison for like 50 years over there for nothing, and you're guilty until proven guilty. So most people don't commit crimes over there unless you're a part of the Yakuza, or if you're a government official. Then you might commit some crimes. Now we can never travel to Japan, Matthew. Put that on the bucket list. But beyond.
Oh man, I didn't say it.
I did. I have to take the blame. Is this a model? A model kit of it? It is from Kato, which is a great brand, by the way. So you can actually get this train if you wanted to make a Japanese rail layout and lay that thing out. That's actually pretty neat. I'll be honest with you, Matthew. I actually saw a review of the Orient Express recently, and this is beating the Orient Express by a mile. The Orient Express sucks these days. It's terrible. Here's the Orient Express. This is the interior. It actually is really nice looking, but the tickets are like $3,000 per person. And I'll be honest with you, Matthew, the service quality was just a little bit above Amtrak's. And I was like, for $3,000 a ticket, it has to be way better than that.
Oh man, I heard the Equalizer got on this train for free and whooped ass. Oh man.
Man, it probably did. I mean, to be entirely honest. The abandoned Orient Express. What the hell's up with this? Oh my goodness. Man.
Oh man, it's Kim Jong-un's luxury ride.
It's Kim Jong-un's whip. It's sitting out in the yard waiting to go. But beyond that, the Japanese trains are very nice. The thing with Japan having a lot of train infrastructure is that people in Japan actually appreciate their trains because the Japanese government actually put enough money into it to make it something competitive. And they also have a lot of population density in Japan to make it work as well, because Japan, from tip to stern, I think the Shinkansen line is about the same length as the Northeast Corridor here in the United States, which is actually crazy to think about, but that's actually a fact. So they generally have a population that really does appreciate railroads, and for that reason, they have incredibly nice trains. If only people in America appreciated the railroads and used them, there would be a lot more nice amenities for them, and a lot more of them. And hopefully the government can spurn that in a way, and spurn that interest. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you for the support, and thank you for sharing that train, so that way we could show it to all of y'all on air. And remind us all, including myself, that we will never be able to afford riding on a train like that. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Darren, for that generous support as well. And we do appreciate that. He said China needs to be stopped. They're out of control.
And I'd have to agree. China has to stop. They're out of control. I went to the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, and I said, whoa. Look, Jack, look, you think the People's Liberation Army is going to take your shit? They're not. They're stronger than that, Jack. They're Maoist-Leninists. You got to understand what you're going up against, Jack. The cards, they're stacked against you. Look, are you okay? Are you all right? I mean, you don't look so well. Looks like the Chinese Communist Party's about to overthrow your ass along with the PLA. Very sad, very, very sad stuff. Look, you got to sit there and talk about Guangdong. You got to talk about that dong. but anyways, I would agree with you.
Whoa.
Well, it's Guangdong, Matthew. I've talked to more foreign ministers than you ever will.
Oh, man. Talk it.
Oh, man, did someone say it? No. Sit your ass down. But I will say, yes, it does look like there's a decent amount of internal conflict right now inside of the Chinese Communist, really in between the Chinese Communist Party and the PLA, which is a wing of the Chinese Communist Party, so kind of a faction of the CCP. But beyond that, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And so with that, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here goes to Butchie777, who puts in a 10-pound donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, for that very generous 10-pound support, by the way. And they put in a super sticker that said wrecked. And it shows the YouTube creature falling out of his chair. Wow, look at that. It's wrecked. But also, in honor of your super chat, Butchie, since Butchie did say the other night that they had I think a Porsche Turbo S or something like that. I believe. I think I have it right. And then they traded in for the Aston, which is, I think, honestly, actually an upgrade, I would say. And let's take a look at this poll in honor of Butcher 777. Which motorbike would you rather have? 33% said the Ducati Street Fighter. 33% said the BMW S1000R. 22% said the Yamaha FZ09 SP. And 11% said the KTM 1390 Super Duke. Here, you can see on the screen, this is a Ducati Street Fighter. This right here is the naked version of a Panigale, and there's the V2, there's the V4, the V4S, and basically the V4 is too much power for the street, the V2 is just right. But the bikes are very expensive, and it costs a lot to maintain. The next up on the screen, you'll see a BMW, that's a S1000R right there. That's an S1000R. Look at that. There's one more zero, and there you go. There's the brand new one, the 2025, and the really cool colors, by the way. This is a BMW S1000 RR in the naked bike form. Very nice, very cool, lots of power, and sounds fantastic. The next up on the list is a KTM. As you can see right here, there is a 1390 Super Duke R. This is a nice bike. The only problem is KTM's having financial difficulties, so I'm not sure how you're going to get the bike serviced if they go bankrupt, but, you know, you could get one probably for cheap right now. People are trying to unload them, but a very cool bike, and I hope they stay in business. The next up on the list is a Yamaha FZ09 SP. This right here is probably the cheapest bike on the list, and it sounds very good. It's a triple. It's a three-cylinder, and it sounds really good. Very unique sound out of all of them. This is a very smooth bike right here, and I can tell you Yamaha is a pretty good brand. They're pretty solid, and also this one's a little bit cheaper to maintain, and it looks pretty good. Me personally, between all of them, I would go with the BMW S1000R because that sound on the BMW S1000 is unmatched. It sounds fantastic, and I love it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say out of all of them, I don't know a damn thing about motorcycles, but I go with the BMW S1000R because I know that thing would be in the shop more than it's on the streets. I guarantee you. I'm just kidding, by the way. I'd probably go with the Ducati Street Fighter. They look pretty cool. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And of course, you know, I have an appreciation for motorcycles. But you know, there's a motorcycle that I really like. It's just that it isn't powerful enough, according to Matthew. So he keeps throwing it down. But it's this little thing right here. It's a Janus motorcycle. Look at this one. This is a Halcyon 250 right here. Classic looking, classic.
The only problem is you'd pull out in traffic and you get smushed because you ain't got enough power to go.
But it looks cool. That's what it's all about. It looks cool. It looks like the retro style earlier days of the motorcycle.
It looks cooler when all the springs come popping out because a car smashes. It looks even cooler, like a cartoon.
Man, you know it looks cool. What?
What was that?
You know what looks cool, man? I'll tell you what. It's the Wabash SD70 Ace. I'll tell you. Man, this thing does look pretty damn cool, though.
It looks okay, but you know what looks cooler than that? You want a motorcycle with some power behind it that looks cool, but also is pretty decent, like all the way around. You want one that's really nice?
Sure, why not? Go ahead, hit me.
So the Kawasaki, let's see here. What's it called? Dang, it just slipped my mind. It was the Kawasaki. No, it's the Kawasaki H2R. That's it. This is the one you need right here. This is it. This right here is a supercharged motorcycle. That's a Lego. But the real deal right there, and another picture, there it is. This thing is mental. It's supercharged, and it literally has a supercharger whine after you rev it. You can hear it. It's whistling. And I like the green frame as well. The only problem is this bike is the most expensive bike you've looked at from the pole and pretty much anywhere. This thing right here is about, I think, $40,000 or something plus. Which is insane for a motorcycle. That's like car money, or like a really nice car money, actually. So, yeah, this thing's just like insane, but it's crazy fast though.
I'll be honest with you, it's all right. It's all right. You know what I like though. You know what I like? I like the Harley Davidson. Oh, you thought I was gonna pull up a model one, didn't you? The Harley Davidson WLA, the World War II Harley Davidson.
They call that the Liberator.
No, they didn't call that thing the Liberator. The Liberator was a little pistol. Have you ever seen the Liberator pistol, Matthew? Have you ever seen the Liberator pistol?
I've never seen it.
There we are.
Oh, I see.
It's a Liberator. It's a pipe gun.
Interesting. Why is it at this museum again?
Oh, I mean the collectibles. We dropped these. We wouldn't drop them. We give them to the resistance fighters, and they shoot Germans with them in France. Kind of cool.
Oh, okay, that's why it's there.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of neat. It's a bit of the French resistance, you know. It's cool. So the idea is that you pop someone in the back and then you'd steal their gun, like their real gun, because this thing sucks. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use it much. But that's how it works. You can see the You see the cartoon that they use to show you how to use it, you know, just in case you got your hands on one. Back in the day, Matthew, America had an entirely different approach to guns. Instead of asking, should you have a gun? They'd say, hey, can you hold a gun? And the answer is yes. Here you go. Here's a free shitty gun. Like it's the high point of its day. It's a great thing. But beyond that, this Harley Davidson WLA, that thing's pretty sick. Or the original, let's see, Indian Chief, I think it was. Let me go see if I can find y'all the original Indian Chief from like the 1940s. How about a 1946? These look like shit. Let me go get the earlier ones. Like, let me go get a 1940. Here we go. That's the one I'm talking about. Take a look at that.
That's not too bad. I'm not a huge fan of Indian motorcycles, though.
You know what I'm not a fan of? I'm not a fan of whatever the hell that is.
This right here is the low glider.
Man, they said, make it look like the wind's flowing over it. It's like, why not just drive it? You know, it's like, it'll look like the wind's flowing over it then just fine. Here's a 1940 Indian Chief Army model. These were in very limited production.
That's all right. That's all right. I think I'd rather have a Honda Grom over those.
But you know something, man, that beats them all? Something that's just better than every single one of them.
A Honda Grom.
Yeah, Honda Grom. Yeah, Honda Grom. Yeah, let's take a look at it. Look at that little shit.
Yes, look at that. This thing is fantastic right here. Look at that. Look at those people. They look totally normal.
They look like they're about to hit the interstate.
Yeah, if you hit the interstate on one of these, you know, it'd probably be a rough day.
Man, if you hit the interstate on one of these, your head's literally hitting the interstate along with the rest of it. Like, man. Oh, man.
This is a tight bike. That guy's looking over there. They say, hey, buddy, look out for that rock. And he says, who, me?
Man, this is the kind of motorcycle right here that lets you go and feel like a miniature dwarf in the circus right here. Like, this is the motorcycle. You know, it's something, that's for sure. It's not something I'd want, but something.
You know, the thing with these Groms right here is honestly they're like, I don't really know what they're really for, to be honest, but the one thing they were used for is these kids would go buy these Groms and they'd create like Grom gangs. At least I've seen them on YouTube. They'll like literally have a whole group of people on these Groms like terrorizing places. I've seen that before, and it's real cheap, so anybody can get them. So you just go get one, and then they start riding around with like a gang, basically.
They see me rolling, they hating. Honestly, they're not hating if you're on that. They're like, man, I pity you. Like,
they're rolling and struggling.
Bro, this is the ramen meal of motorcycles right here. It's the Grom. Like, it's like, man, rip. Honestly. Also, someone said, check out the 1927 Excelsior. I will. 1927 Excelsior. Super X, I suppose. Ooh, I like that. That's pretty cool.
This is like something Jay Leno would have in his garage or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's an old motorcycle. I mean, that would make sense, man. That's like saying, wow, I think he'd have an old car in his garage. Of course he would. He's Jay Leno.
Actually, Leno collects everything. He's got mainly new and old.
Of course he would, Matthew. He's Jay Leno. And for some reason, some people tried to push a conspiracy theory that when he fell down a hill near to a Holiday Inn trying to get to the breakfast, that he had mob debts and he was getting beat up for him. And I was like, how the hell would that be? He's loaded. It's not like he's running out of money anytime soon. And why the hell would anyone be beating him up at that age, you know? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But beyond that, it is a nice motor. Oh, look at that one.
Oh, I don't like these.
I like him. I like him a lot. Let's see. The new Himalayan infield. Oh, Himalayan infield. I spelled Himalayan all sorts of wrong, but we'll find it. This is all right. This is all right. Not bad. Not bad.
If you want one of these, you can go get yourself a BMW GS if you want something like those.
Ah, I see. Yeah.
Yes, one of these right here. These things are good for off-roading.
Because I live in the middle of the safari, and I'm always going to be driving around in the safari in the middle of Alabama. Genius!
Well, you actually take these. There's a lot of people that actually take these on trips to Africa, actually, so that's why they have it there.
Well, they must have more money than me, because I wouldn't be transporting an entire motorcycle to Africa. I can promise you that one.
I think they rent them there.
I mean, maybe. I don't know, man. I have no clue. But, you know, like, I wouldn't have that kind of money anyways, you know, to go to Africa on a safari. Like, also, I don't want to get mauled by the animals of Africa. They're usually fairly large and violent, so kind of like Australia, really. So I'd rather pass. Like, I think I'm all right. But you know, let's take a little look down here. Let's take a little gander, huh? Ah, yes. What are these piles of rubble?
Who the hell had a 360 camera out here in the middle of nowhere?
In 2017. None of this is making sense. None of it's adding up. How about we go to Dallas? Oh, we can't go to Dallas. How about we go over here? No freaking way. It's a mobile home in the middle of America. I feel just at home. This is like Alabama out here. Like, no way. It's a freaking, it looks like it might be a trailer park in the middle of Africa. We are right at home, Matthew. This is just like Alabama. Like, there are, by the way, if y'all don't know, if you've never been to Alabama, there are trailer parks literally everywhere in Alabama. So if you see a trailer like that, you're right at home. So that's wild, man. I didn't know that they had trailers in the middle of Africa. Like, that's news to me. Anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Silver ZZX22, puts in a 5, and thank you, Silver, for that support. They say, I appreciate what you do, and thank you for informing the viewers about the importance of the U.S. relationship with its allies in Europe and elsewhere.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for appreciating it, because we try our best. We really do. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, big shout out to Jose Aguera and also Tornadoes for putting in a 5 and also putting in a $2 support. And thank you very much, Jose and Tornadoes, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. We appreciate it. And we have a $5 super chat from Rye Guy SR, who says, do you think with energy ceasefire, although it may not last long, would bring about the time for Ukraine to hit the Kerch Bridge and finally take it out?
Possibly it could. I'm not really sure on that one, though, because this ceasefire fell apart quicker than we could even get to that question, which is actually hilarious that that is the case. So, probably not, because it won't even last long enough for that to be the chance. And so with that, I think it wants to give her support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from the B-Man, and thank you, B-Man, for as well for that support. They said, Honey Badger and the Fly, old school.
The honey badger and the fly. We haven't had the honey badger up on screen in a long time, actually.
I don't even know where you'd find him.
Me either, actually. I don't really know if we even use the honey badger a lot as a symbol. It's the official animal of the LSA. It's just that we don't use it much at all anymore. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Sadly, I don't even know where to find the badger to begin with right now. But we eventually will find it, because it is the official animal of the LSA, so it can't be missing for that long. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I just remember it's actually Stoffel the Badger. That was the Badger. But anyways, moving on to our next one. This one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Sarge, for that support also. He said, LSA hit the like button, and that's an order.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and please do hit that like button. We've gotten up to 2,600 likes, and we've gotten 50,000 views over the whole length of the stream. Honestly, that's a small crowd right there, a small crowd of a million. but beyond that, thank you once again. I hope that this addressed it well, and thank you once again, LC Sergeant Figment, for being a channel legend, supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running even this far into the war and the news coverage that we've been doing. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one. Oh, by the way, I forget to mention all of y'all, the stream will not be running from this Saturday to next Tuesday. It will be running on Wednesday because I actually will be gone from here for a short while. I'll be off doing something else. I totally forgot to mention that again tonight. I was supposed to start mentioning it yesterday, but if y'all can spread the word, there will be no streams from Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, to Tuesday of next week. We will begin our normal streaming schedule on Wednesday of next week, again, after our brief intermission. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Well, there will be short war videos every single day that there is news, though. So we're still putting out videos, but just not the streams on those days. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Tharain2, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Tharain, for that support. They said it was aliens.
Maybe it was. Who knows? But I do thank you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to BAD, who puts in a 2 once again. It says desertion, no trace, jetpacks, or Fulton balloons.
I would say most likely not. It probably was just something a lot more mundane, although it may also be unfortunate. So with that, I thank you for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one goes to Tornadoes once again, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Tornadoes, for that $2 support. And also, no comment was left there. I was totally just went all over the place. But, Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Devin Seals, who puts in a 2 and says, time to get good at refurbishing.
And I'd have to agree. It's time to get good at refurbishing. And what do you mean, Jack? We can refurbish anything. Look, listen, are you okay? Are you all right? But beyond that, thank you once again. I hope that it's addressed well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that, we are now fresh out of Super Chat questions. We are now moving on from our Super Chats, no cap. We are now moving on from our Super Chats and on to our live chat questions. And once again, huge shout out to everybody once again for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running. But we have our Morse code decoders of the stream first. Tonight, the entire roster: Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, or Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code says, let's hope that we can find these 4 U.S. soldiers alive, although it is a race against time. LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I congratulate y'all greatly for getting that correct time and time again, because y'all have gotten that Morse code message correct for 1,127 days of the war. Very impressive stuff right there. And so with that, it is time for us to move on into the live chat questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and our first one is going to go to Cookie, who says, what will the U.S. do if they find foul play in the situation in Belarus?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not entirely sure. I feel like there would be a large armed standoff if they were captured, and there probably would be I don't know if there would be a war that would break out if they were killed, but the diplomatic situation would completely fall apart. That is a guarantee at a minimum, but beyond that, I really can't say with a lot of certainty exactly what would happen, because this current administration is largely unpredictable, so saying what they would do is pretty much shooting darts. We could hit anywhere on the board, and it might be right or it might be wrong. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to You're Taking My Life. He says, what if they got out when they got stuck in the water and then took off on foot and accidentally crossed into Belarus?
Well, you most likely would know about that by now, because the Belarusians would be making a big deal about how they captured some U.S. soldiers. It's possible, but still at the same time, we haven't gotten enough indicators to see if that's actually what happened. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, big shout out to MPuffer006, who put in a 5. First ever on the live stream, actually, according to YouTube. And thank you very much, Puffer, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And with that, we're going to go right back into our live chat questions. And this one is going to go to Davis, who said, will Ukraine drive the Russians back with a broad attack across all fronts, or concentrated rapid assaults?
I think that the Ukrainians are going to be trying to drive the Russians back in concentrated assaults at key points of the front line, because they don't have the manpower to expend across the entire thing to push them back in every direction. So they're most likely going to be pushing the Russians back in strategic fronts like Toretsk and Pokrovsk at a minimum, and only. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Deca, who says, do you think this incident will prompt the USA to get more directly involved, or was it a setup to get us more involved?
I'm not entirely sure. It really depends on how it turns out. I mean, if they just ended up drowning and we unfortunately recover their bodies further down the river, nothing will come of it. But if they ended up being captured by the Belarusians or something else like that, then I'd probably say that that would most likely be not something that we intentionally did, because no one wants to intentionally be captured. You really can't get a lot of people to sign up for something like that. It more so would just been an unintentional thing that would really force our hand in the situation, I would hope, and I would like to see that we would make sure to be there for our service members. But that would largely be what I would assume at this point. And so with that, thank you once again for support. No, thank you for the support. You were actually a live chat question, so I thank you for asking that very interesting question. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have 2 more live chat questions that are left in the spreadsheet. And this one goes to B.L. Arthur, who says, is the U.S. currently at war? And if not, should the U.S. security of defense attire that he wore en route to Guam be considered disrespectful to the Office of Security of Defense, not political?
Actually, I would have to say that's a little bit above my pay grade to answer that kind of a question on the protocol involving that. So I would largely have to declare ignorance on that right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, is the U.S. currently at war?
Oh, yeah, no, we're not. That's very easy. We know we're not. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we are now on to our last question here. We only have one left.
Oh.
So, Enforcer, do the thing.
Well, we are on to our final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is AF Kaplan, who says, regarding the missing or dead U.S. soldiers in Lithuania, has there been any official statement yet from the U.S. DoD?
There's been no official statement from the U.S. Department of Defense yet to the health of the soldiers, so at this moment it's largely unknown, at least on their end. NATO and Lithuania has made comments about it, as well as the U.S. Embassy, but I don't believe we've gotten any official statements yet from the U.S. Department of Defense. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching. We are, of course, very happy to have all of y'all here. We reached a peak viewership of 8.4 thousand people, and so far 50,000 people have watched this stream from beginning to end. And we were incredibly honored and grateful to have all of y'all here, and we hope to see y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again, all 50,000 people, for joining us once again tonight on this day 1127 of the War News Stream. And be sure to join us again tomorrow night for another night of the stream, and also midday as well for that short war video if there is enough news to cover midday tomorrow. But with that, thank you all for joining us, and of course, Slava Ukraine. Here on Slava, get some rest and good night.